Sigmar multicast. Grab your hammer so we can clear a path through the chaos and forge our own narratives in the age of Sigmar. Your allies through the Realm Gate this episode are...
I'm Davey, noisome knight in the Order of the Superfly.
This is Eric, and no one puts Bobonicus in a corner.
I'm Aaron, and I didn't realize that I could just blame anything I did wrong on a demon that was living inside of me.
And this is Paul. My nut hunts are rather exclusive. Only the wraithful.
In this episode, we're going to be following Lord-Celestant of the Hallowed Knights, Gardus Steelsoul, into the depths of Nurgles' patch of heaven in the realm of chaos, jumping feet first into pustuled swamps in search of his Lord Castellant Lorrus Grymn. This is written by Josh Reynolds and available to order at blacklibrary.com as an ebook or hardback. We will also be discussing our Coalescence experience and a new homebrewed skirmish campaign that we have in the works. You can listen to us on iTunes or search for Mortal Realms on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review. Or new this month or last month, you can watch us on YouTube. Like and subscribe and share your comments below. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Grand.
Fantastic.
Beyond outstanding.
Fantastic.
I feel lackluster with my answer now.
Yeah,
Super grand. Like really grand.
Yeah, that's all bad.
When you jump in first, it gives everyone else an opportunity to one-up you. Or two-up you, as it were.
I'm doing you all a solid. You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
So let's get talk a little bit about hobby progress or games played or just things you've been doing since we last showed up here. Paul, what have you been up to?
Well, I have been working on a skirmish warband, but I also did something specific for Plague Garden. As I was reading the book, I was really intrigued by a transformation that happened to one of the characters, and it was an idea that had been rattling around in my head previously. So I converted up my own version of Morbus. If you read the background, if you read Plague Garden, there is a certain point where his armor splits, and as it were, the light of Azir comes through his armor.
Spoilers.
Yeah, sorry, spoilers. So I attempted to make my own version of a miniature version of that story.
Very cool. Turned out great.
Thanks.
Davey, what have you been up to?
All in on Caradron Overlords. Yeah, been very excited. I got 10 Arcanauts complete. I got a Navigator complete. And I know I talked last time about, trying to spread my wings a little bit with some techniques. So I got a little bit of a glow technique going on with them, and then did way more freehand than I've ever done before. I've kind of restricted that to the occasional banner, but every one of those guys has got it on each shoulder. And then the Navigator, I was trying to freehand some Starscape on his little Zephyr scope or whatever it may actually be, one of his little instruments. So a lot of fun. Currently working on a frigate, which it was a task just to assemble, but a lot of fun. I'm really loving the models, and they just did a great job of just thinking about how these things would function. So you can look like, okay, on this side there's the hatch that the Argonauts would be coming out of, and then the guardrail has clearly a clasp where it's going to swing out of the way, and then there's a little tab that'll flop down so that you can drop the ladder down. Like it's all a lot of thought. It almost kind of tells a story, even though it's just sitting there static. So really been enjoying that a lot. This will be not the biggest. The frigate's on the bigger end of anything I typically paint, and it's got a lot more like wide, flat spaces, which I haven't done for a long time, since back to my 40K days where I did it, but very poorly. So it'll be a challenge. I'm trying the Duncan Road 2 or more thin coats, trying to hold true to his
It's
and
garbage.
in the case.
Oh, wow, bold statement.
One super thick coat for me.
Yeah. Eric's able to shuck all standards and come out with awesome stuff, but
He's almost the exception that proves the rule.
yeah, he's the exception to a lot of things.
Did you say you're putting the frigate together entirely? Like you're going to put the whole thing together before you...
No. So sub-assemblies right now are the Endrins, like the big spheres. Then there's a frigate sitting separate. The crew are separate. And then I've kept the turret separate because I need to magnetize the two guns so I could put... I currently have not figured out a way where the skyhook would be more useful than a cannon, but it's possible. Who knows? And I'd like to have it.
Forget about it.
Well, okay. Well, there's your one.
Wow.
But it is also doubling as my warband for a skirmish campaign. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And the other thing I've managed to do with this is be extraordinarily disciplined as far as purchasing, trying to paint up as I go. The only reason I've broken that is because Paul had some Arcanauts he was getting rid of, so I did him a huge favor and
Totally.
I took those off.
So generous.
I know. All I do is give, but no, and win, I guess, but no.
No matter what.
All right.
Aaron,
Aaron, what you got going on, man?
Actually, I mean, I have been painting, surprisingly enough. Working on my War Chanter, Tarvis Borker, drummer extraordinaire. I think I don't know if I've talked about this before, but as far as like my Iron Jaws go, not necessarily the greatest painter. I don't know. I don't highlight or dry brush all that well. So with these guys, the reason I'm going so slow, or what I tell myself anyways, I'm looking at them. That's what I'm looking at right now. Is like I'm just trying to make the cleanest, clearest base coats like possible. Because that's like something I can control. Like you don't need necessarily a skill to do so. Like the two-thin coats, it's very mechanical in nature. So base coats are all done on the War Chanter and my brutes. Now again, I'm trying to approach it the same way with my washes as well. Keep it under control. No pooling. No overly dirty look. Because I think those are probably the easiest controllable steps. And then maybe I just never highlight them ever again and just leave them in their dirty state. I mean, they're orcs. That makes sense.
Well, I think to your point though, like, so you're working on control of these, and with your whole OCD thing, like that makes total sense, right? But figuring out brush control is a big gateway to some other things.
Sure, yeah.
Eric can talk better.
Like heroin.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Well, okay. I mean, can I do anything about? Can I stave that off? Like, I don't want. I've got a family, man.
If you keep off the brush control, it will definitely not lead to heroin.
Sure. Gateway drug. Yeah, but that's about it. Those guys, I think we were saying, are going to be my war band for the skirmish campaign as well.
Nice.
Oh, Eric, let me ask. Hey, Eric, what you been up to?
Well, thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Glad to share. So
I can tell.
In this next season of our monthly game nights, and with kind of Shadespire stuff all abound, and the game coming up, and potentially, I don't know, death release sometime in the future, I decided to jump back from Stormcast to my death stuff. I'm hoping to be playing some Nagash over the next 3 game nights. See how he fares in our Tzeentch heavy meta. And
making a lot of friends, I bet.
I mean, he does have this handshake. He's really, and so I've been. Nagash was the first non-ogre model that I'd painted back in like 2015 or something like that, and so he's getting a refresh. Way back in the day for me. He's getting a refresh, bring his colors in line with my Death Army where it's come so far. Bringing Nagash into line with my Death Army. Who does that?
Sounds right.
And so I'm putting him together, but then it's also got me into all I've got. I just did basing and dry brushing and stuff for all the bases for 45 zombies, like 30 skeleton warriors, 15, 20 skeleton archers, or at least the skeleton archers are like peasant bowmen and what are the elven bows?
Glade Guard?
Glade Guard, yep. So some undead Glade Guard. The spearmen and the warriors are just kind of the stock thing with a little bit of mods, but so we got a lot of that stuff, some dire wolves on bases, trying to get them based up, etc. And so then I'll be doing a ton of base colors and stuff on troops. So
are those troops going to match your Death Army as a whole? Like, are they supposed to be part of that whole?
Yep. So the skeletons are all bone, so they're definitely. And as we get to I think my zombies are going to be battle line for kind of my Soul Blight stuff. And so they're brighter or more of the Evil Sun Scarlet. So my Soul Blight have much more of the red in them. So everything's going to be in line with each other, and
This has been a cool thing about seeing your death progresses. You are doing these, you're figuring out how to expand, but you're doing it by almost like all these mini factions within death.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, this death rattle is going to look this way, and I'm going to build up something that's heavy death rattle. And, there were the Tomb King stuff. And now you're looking at, all right, what's my Soul Blight going to look like, and building up. That's a cool way of going about it. I bet you you're not alone in the way of looking at how to expand. I mean, I guess even with my Slaanesh, I look at like, oh, well, let me add some Bray Herd stuff on now.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I keep going
I think yeah, I mean, in this new world we're in, and we've been figuring out over the last couple of years as AOS hit, and our armies can expand beyond our, little tight blocks.
Right.
That you can, even my Stormcast, my Anvils of the Heldenhammer are based on my color scheme for my Death Army. So even they are another variation on that, because I want them in some of our narrative games to fight next to each other. So, yeah, it's kind of like sometimes inverting the colors or just weighting them differently. So all my Soulblight stuff have much more of the red and black. Skeletons have much more of the bone and a little bit of red in them, etc. So yeah, I've got to figure out, I want to do Flesh Eater Court at some point and figure out how they differentiate from the other ones as well. So we will see. So I've been working on that. Otherwise, it's been a lot of, we'll talk more about campaign stuff, but it's been a lot more kind of thinking of ways to expand things for our small group to be enjoying the game and the hobby and to have some fun. So, all right.
Let's expand our borders beyond just our group, right? Take away the community.
Let's do it.
In the community phase, we talk about news and events that are significant to the AOS community. So a couple things. The skirmish rules have been out in the wild for a little while now, and so we're getting to see what people are going to do with them. And we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing with that. We're seeing people playing games. It seems to have been well received. And then I know like Tom and Vince thinking about some things on their end, and we've heard some podcasts of the inspiration. I don't know. I guess they were going for it, but with who am I thinking of? The original skirmish guy here was Bottle.
Oh yes, yeah.
So his take on how his project slots in with that, and looking at not competing and being able to add to it. And that's it's the cool thing we've seen, particularly with Age of Sigmar, is people finding ways to add a little bit on or add their own little modules to it. So and then if skirmish has got you started off, then you get to expand up to Path to Glory, and we've seen something about that, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting announcement to have that. So Path to Glory has had a kind of truncated set of army building rules in the General's Handbook 1 or 2016, and it's now going to have its own standalone book, which is cool. It's supposedly it's going to have Path to Glory then for every or as many factions as it can.
A lot of the battle tones have it now, right?
Yeah. Well, I can tell
the latest
most.
3.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Right. I think Overlords. I don't know about. I can't speak to Blades of Khorne like how detailed it is, but Overlords. You've got advancement tables for any of your units, for your ships, for each one of your characters has their own advancement table. Like they got pretty detailed with it, and I have to imagine there'd be some kind of indicator of what you'd see in a full Path to Glory supplement. Although that's a lot of things, but yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder too though if they'll limit it to things that are available. I don't think they'll limit, like Skirmish, they limited the points to things that were available in the store, non-fine cast generally, non-metal, etc. I don't know if Path to Glory will do anything like that. I would imagine it's anything that's has points would get room in that, kind of thing.
My understanding is that would be correct. Yeah, it seems to say every faction was going to get these Path to Glory expansion charts. So,
and so I imagine then the Path to Glory campaign that was in the General's Handbook was just kind of like a tree campaign where there was like 4 or 5 kind of locations, and depending on results, you'd go fight in this one. If that turned out your way, you'd go this one, or you'd go back, etc., until it was complete. So I'm sure there'll be some more campaign stuff as well. inside there, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But that leads to the third thing, and that's the General's Handbook 2017, and that leaves a big gap in the narrative section of the upcoming handbook. And there's been a little bit of information on what might be in there, including siege rules.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which I know some people, I've heard some people say that siege rules and old editions weren't that exciting. Have you guys, Davey, Paul, you guys had any experience with old siege rules?
Yeah, I actually played, what was it, 5,000 points per side, where we combined every rule set at that point. I think it was in 8th edition, so we used 8th edition and Storm of Magic and Siege and just had a huge battle.
You're
And
talking
it was a
about
lot of fun.
language.
It was a lot of fun. Siege, I won't lie, there were so many rules flying around. It was pretty crazy. And I don't think either of us could control who won or not, but yeah, we definitely used them. For 8th edition, they were a little, I think, simplified, as I played them, I think, in 5th or 6th as well. And those were a little bit more complicated. 8th edition just kind of treated it as a bunch of buildings that were all separate pieces of terrain, but you could go from one building into another. So it was cool. It worked.
I'm looking forward to it. Right now, I've got the Dreadhold Battle Tome, and it talks about garrisoning buildings. But if you really dig into it, there's some mechanics that don't quite work. You know, it says like the building is all of a sudden represents the unit, so you can't approach within 3 inches because it's a unit. But then they got rules like, hey, if you approach within 3 inches without charging, then there's some stuff you're like, I don't think you totally thought out how this works, and so
Doesn't add up.
yeah, exactly. And it's fine. You can figure it out, but it'll be cool to see a more robust representation with a level of detail that you just don't need in a regular AOS game, but would be perfect for something like Siege. And it's a great place to put it in the narrative because you got asymmetrical game, right? And you can tell some pretty epic stories with it, I think. So
cool. Yeah, I'm really looking forward. I never did any Siege. I remember a couple of years ago, some of the Siege kits were on kind of like a temporary release before AOS dropped. They looked really cool. I wonder if some of those might pop out again with the release of this. So siege towers and whatnot.
It would be cool to see like that, and I'm sure like GW Main and then the hobby population at large are gonna do some cool things with it, like see the AOS version of siege towers and stuff. You need some spear chuckers carrying ladders. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
so what you guys are saying is I do need to buy a Hellfort then.
Of course, you need to complete your collection. Otherwise, your collection will be incomplete.
Oh,
yeah.
don't say that to me, man. That hurts.
Just go to Hellfort.
So, in our last get together, Aaron, the obsessive collector that he is, learned that there was one part of the Dreadfort kit that is only available when you buy the Hellfort combo kit. It's like the crumbled piece of wall or something that.
Why would they do that to me?
We also
capitalism.
We also discussed though you could offload some of those other kits that are already included in the Hellfort, right?
I've never sold anything in my life.
You're.
I got nothing else to add. Yeah.
They're not going to cover your grave in dirt. It's just going to be gray plastic
with stuff. Yeah, as long as Kenny doesn't get it, sure.
Oh, and then last thing to share about the community phase. So after Coalescence wrapped up, some of the Neons chat a little bit. There's an AOS Neon Facebook page. So you just have to go into Facebook and search AOS space Neon, and you should be able to find that. And that's where some of the players and Neos from Coalescence are gathering and chatting and talking about things that they're doing. And then we also started a website. We are the neon.wordpress.com. It's just something for us to get started with, start the chat, start sharing things, talking about things, posting content for sharing, etc., and see where it goes. What
sort of things can be found there? Like, what can they expect to see?
Yeah,
well,
so
kicked off a series is going to be a monthly Neo of note. So basically, a event organizer. Like, here's what the cool thing is that some of it has felt sort of centralized, but really the cool thing about this narrative event thing is it happened all over. And so this is taking a look at what does narrative look like in this part of the world? What does it look like here? What is this organizer? You know, maybe they're in the same state, but they're doing things totally different. So it's a cool way to see how things are happening different. Just basically a way to share and pool ideas, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple of retrospectives about Coalescence from some people. You know, if somebody's got a any rule sets that they've created for things, that's something that can be shared in this space. So if you wanted to write a blog post or something like that to share content you've created, as we talk about things here on this, if we have any rule sets we've created in our homebrew stuff, it's likely that we'll host and post things there for people to find them. So, you know, it's growing. So the types of things you might find there can change. If you have thoughts on what you think could go there, and just want to say, hey, can I put this up there that's narrative focused and there to support the community, then I would say reach out to myself at Stone Monk Gamer or Aaron Bostian, who's, well, check us out on the AOS Neon Facebook group, post there, and I'm sure it'll get picked up. So, yeah. Anything else you guys want to share from the community?
I think that.
No, other than I want to see Paul's information up on the website. I think there's some sweet pictures we took of your boards. That'd be worthwhile.
Well,
we'll definitely. I think that's. Aaron definitely said he this was one of the only. Maybe he said he was gonna get it. I don't know. We'll talk to Aaron.
Gotcha.
See, figure it out.
Do it.
He did mention though that of all the pictures we got, most of them were of boards and crotches. And so if you so we need to definitely get the pictures of kind of people's faces and smiling and that sort of stuff. So if you do have neon pictures from the Coalescence event, and you got some smiling faces, people playing, definitely make sure you get those over to the AOS Facebook group, and we'll get them up on that website as well.
I think Boards and Crotches is going to be the name of my new AOS parody band.
Yeah. I'm gonna be creating some custom Age of Sigmar belt buckles and tabards for sporting at the game table for when pictures are shot.
Sure,
so look for Mortal Realms thunder tabards.
Yeah, the M and the lightning bolt actually would fit real well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Just hanging down.
Yeah, I get you.
Okay. Anyway, anyway. All right, I think that's everything for the community phase.
All right, so we're moving on. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry.
Take it.
Moving on to the campaign phase.
Yes.
In the campaign phase, we explore how the plastic hits the table: rules, scenarios, new tactics, and narrative campaigns. So speaking of Neon, we're going to move right on here into the Coalescence recap.
That's true.
We ran Coalescence here locally.
I was gonna.
Yeah, we're mostly, so there's been a bit of a broad look at it, and if you want to know, kind of the overall results, I encourage you to head to that website we talked about before, wearetheneon.wordpress.com, and a number of places have done a pretty cool recap. They I know Hard Six talked about the event they ran. I know Rolling Bad talked about theirs. They seem to have a blast down there. A bunch of different places have brought it up, and that's been cool to see. For ours, we had pretty good turnout. Paul, we were like 14. What did we end up with?
Yep, we ended up with 14 players, which I was pretty happy with. There's a lot.
Rightfully so, yeah.
I know we talked about your tables a little bit last time, and really the pictures are what needs to do them justice. Even me, seeing your work in progress, I didn't quite realize that they were going to be modular, where they went from all the same pieces could be rearranged multiple times until you're in this hall of pillars and archways, and then eventually became this great big ziggurat that it felt like a really cool build to the climactic end.
Well, and Paul intentionally hid that from us. We did the episode last time looking like, oh yeah, look, the quantity of plastic, but we didn't really get to appreciate the quality of the thought behind it until third round, when he had made a couple of different variations, from turn one to turn 2, but turn 3, his Transformer-esque modular terrain just changed, and it was crazy.
How did you get him to make the Transformer noise? Like, that was the most impressive part.
You just
you just make a soundboard. It costs like $5 to make.
Okay,
it's not that hard.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was it. Okay.
That was an amazing invitation.
Save yourself $5.
Yeah. Should have just had Eric do it.
Hey guys, talent isn't free.
Technically, isn't
talent,
it?
When Michael Bay came out with the new Transformers, made me feel really, really old because I could not figure out what was going on in the fight scenes. I was like, it was just a bunch of metal spinning around. So
I couldn't figure it out in Transformers 1. I was just, I completely agree with you, Davey. It makes no sense to me.
Exactly.
Hey, you guys remember that board game, kind of like a tabletop game called the Age of Sigmar, where you'd like push little dudes around the table? That was fun. Tell me more about Coalescence, Paul.
The game itself was based on the campaign pack that was put out by Neon. It was played over the course of 3 scenarios, over the course of 1 day. So basically, you were approaching a building, then you were running through the building for ours, and then you were in the center room of the building for the final scenario itself. There was a really interesting thing that happened that I did not realize would happen. It makes me really appreciate Warhammer World terrain, actually. Once I thought back about it, is how when you physically lift up the surface of the table, when you put it up at 6 inches, 8 inches, whatever, you actually require people to look each other in the eye when they're playing a game instead of looking down at the table. And if you notice, yeah, it does. But if you look at Warhammer World, most of their tables have that like high level. There's at least 1 or 2 things on the table that really do that. And even just their basic dreadhold stuff, right, is 12, 16 inches off the table. And it invites you to actually interact with other people a lot. And that for me is the most enduring memory of that day, is just how many people were talking with each other, having a great time. And especially that last round where everybody was looking at the same table. It was almost like everybody was playing the same game on 4 different tables.
Yeah,
that was a really cool thing. So
that's touching.
Yeah. So it was really cool too, is the way you handled. There's a number of things that in the pack that we're trying to kind of get people out of a competitive mindset, but even in but there's some things that were left to the Neo to do. And one of the things that you did that was really cool was the pairings. And initially it was just kind of like, who someone raised their hand, I've got this. Who wants to play against that? And so it gave people really an opportunity to A, play against something maybe they hadn't played against before, and B, kind of choose not to play against people that they play with all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really cool kind of initial to get people jumping into the games. And then
we've talked a lot on the show about sending signals, and that was a great one, sending a signal right off the bat, like, hey, this isn't random pairing, pick one that you want to do, signaling the relaxed nature of what the day was going to be like. So intentionally or not, that served that purpose really well.
Thanks.
And I think later on, then it was things like trying to figure out what made sense. When we get to the final table, there's in the second game, there was a couple of cases where we had to pair chaos versus chaos. But then on the last tables, trying to make it as spread out as we could, so that we'd get just really cool matchups. And I do think those last games ended up being kind of epic, and each one in its own way, which is really cool.
Yeah, the Destiny dice mechanic made for a really big challenge, and the Bloodbound mechanic, right, where you have the Blood Tithe coming in. Those two, if we would have had 2 Tzeentch armies on one table or 2 Khorne armies on one table, it would have been completely overpowering because they would have been doubling up on their power. So, it was something I had never thought of before we started playing, that became to make sure that people could actually enjoy what's going on. So it was an interesting thought I hadn't had before the tournament.
One of the things I wrote a kind of a, what do you call it, a follow-up article that we posted on the AOS Facebook group and a few other places. And got quoted a little bit on the community website. But one of the things that really struck me too is that I'm not just named.
I didn't really have a point. I just wanted to get that out there. No big deal.
Sure.
But
so moving on, yeah.
But we had a number of players at the event that were pretty competitive. That are generally very competitive players. But they really, I would say, where there may be some misconception that if you're competitive, you don't like narrative, and if you're narrative, you don't like competitive. It was, again, with the right signals, I felt like people slipped into narrative very easily. That being a competitive person didn't hinder them from having fun, from like writing, bringing something that was going to be fun to have there. I think no matter what, there's certainly the way our the scenarios were that you're always going to get some unknown lopsided thing that can happen from time to time. But I really enjoyed how some of our, some very competitive players in our community really were able to get down and have fun. And it wasn't, we had enough signals, or we just had enough of the right atmosphere to make it feel real comfortable.
Yeah, I don't know if I was playing anybody particularly competitive in the first place, but what I noticed was that like everybody had their story, like you were supposed to have about your army, and they were happy to share it, which I thought was rare. It wasn't just like, oh, I did this out of obligation, but they were gung ho about it, which was a delight.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We had people, participants of all ages. We had what was our youngest?
I think it was 14.
Yeah. So, and played like a gentleman, and had won for best story. So his narrative paragraph had, almost took itself the least serious compared to us adults. Just had a lot of humor in it and showed a lot of maturity, etc. So, and got to see him playing with his dad was there. And so just seeing it as a family event too was really cool. And then a number of faces. I know one of the owner and the manager of a local game store took time out to come over to the event, which was hosted at a different game store. And it was great. It was the first time I'd really met them and got to know them a little bit. And it was cool that they were willing to come out, kind of to competitors or to a different store to play a game and have fun. And it was cool to meet them and have that experience too. So the narrative just really brought people together.
Yeah, no, I definitely felt like the narrative brought the whole room together. It wasn't like we were playing on 8 different tables, even in the first scenario, the second scenario, and the third scenario we were only on 4. But it just didn't feel like that the whole day. It was kind of a cool thing.
Well, yeah, it was a combination of the fact that the tables were the same, but then also the fact that we were all fighting for the same stuff too. So like it all across the board, which is fun because we were playing on boards. Like it was a unifying presence, no matter like what angle you looked at it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Everybody playing the same scenario, everybody playing it towards having the same kind of effect happening, with the one alliance being in favor, kind of gelling everybody else to kind of go root against them at the end of each battle round, being able to come together with the others in your alliance and say, all right, what did you get? And you're like, I've let you down. And they were like, I've got this, that sort of stuff, and having different like heroes within our alliances. One time I had a round that I got to carry my alliance, and then the next time, Mike Butcher got to carry us, that sort of thing. So there's things like that absolutely just made you feel like you were part of something bigger. And then not to mention, before we even got started, being able to see, like results from, New Zealand and Australia rolling in and just kind of anticipating this wave coming our way as we got to get started, and start kind of racking up our results and stuff. So
it was pretty cool to see the net come alive with Coalescence picks and reports and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, that hashtag, that was crazy.
Yeah.
The tweets are alive with the sound of Coalescence.
It's really too bad. I'd like to apologize.
I think David said he's going to quit the podcast if he kept doing that.
You know, it is the 50th anniversary of Sound of Music, so that was a great tribute, Eric. Thank you. I appreciate it. One of the other interesting things that I had not also considered was that because all the boards were the same, when you finished your game, you could walk over to another table and you knew exactly what was going on because it was the same board, right? Yep. I hadn't contextualized that either. So you didn't even need to have a conversation. So there's necessarily this distraction even. Everybody just kind of knew what was going on.
Wait a sec. You said that you wanted people looking each other in the eye because you wanted more conversations.
I didn't say I wanted that. I said that was something that happened that I really didn't think about.
Fair enough.
It was cool.
What's interesting too with your boards is because they were symmetrical, in a lot of cases, like which would be more fitting for a match play. Like
bring that up.
Sometimes like match play tournaments, they want like similar, but they don't ever go quite to like symmetrical. Like every table is exactly the same. Everybody plays the exact same mission on round 1, round 2, round 3, or whatever. So I feel like we adopted. Because we had so many other things, we adopted things that might have fit more of a match play kind of style.
Have there been tournaments where every table's set up the way? Like, I mean, just competitive tournaments, 8th edition, what have you? Like, I'm surprised I haven't heard of it, but I wouldn't have heard of it. But like, it seems like it's a great way to do it.
Yeah,
I think Davey has some input.
I know like ETC would do maps. Like here's, the 5 possible maps that you could play on. So you could train reps on, now I'm doing this map, now I'm doing this map, Maybe South Coast as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think any of the events that we know of.
Yeah.
Well, I was told that War Machine actually does that. They do this is the way that the setup is, and this is the way that the setup is, right? So I have heard that that's the way that War Machine runs events, as they do have identical tables to make that all kind of the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something that I was concerned that might end up leading to a bit of a match play, because everything was identical, and then ended up being an ungrounded fear. So that
I agree.
Well, one thing I enjoyed again was the signals we sent, and then as a player, I was able to kind of, signal to my opponent like, hey, here's what I'm doing to try and make this narrative. Like making some conscious decisions of like, hey, this would be a cooler story if we did X or whatever. So. Like in the first one, I had the chance for the double turn. It was just going to be like a non-game. So it was like pass it to the other guy to make it a game. And we ended up with some really cool moments to think about instead of just being, okay, well, we're done. And I, racked up some stuff. Similarly, I was one of the ones that had to do chaos versus chaos in the second round. And we could have gamed it to be like, all right, let's make sure we each get as many feats as we can so chaos stays in the lead. And we ended up doing exactly the opposite, because every time, he'd be like, well, you could just, let me grab that. I'm like, no, like that's not the story of, chaos fighting chaos here. Like we're going all out domination in, once or twice like that. And then he was on board for the rest of it. And we were just kicking the crap out of each other.
Nice.
And hoping that somebody else was doing well, because we were not helping our alliance out for sure. So.
Yeah. There was definitely a few things, I think from the point of view of like trying to get those feats, while I liked winning the scenario just fine, like it was the one worth the most. Like trying to keep my head on those other feats and trying to like do those things. I was really, really fun to have those other objectives there. Wanting to, kill another hero, or try and get one of my my battle line to kill a hero, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
I would
stuff
say
like that was really cool.
Yeah, if there's any lesson learned on those, it might be make sure the feats aren't something that you have to like carefully track during the game, because there's just so much going on in the game of Age of Sigmar that anyone that was like, count up this number of things that happened. I would say at least half the time when I'd be trying to collect results for chaos, like, hey, did you get this? And they're like, oh, we didn't even think about that, and they'd have to go back and try to add it up. But if it was a thing like, yes, no, did this happen? They would be able to answer that pretty easily. So stuff like which hero caused the most wounds, breaking that ended up being some back of a napkin math after the fact. So
I'm gonna bring an abacus next time.
Yeah. I mean, do you not always have one? I don't.
Well, I mean, mine's too big. Like I got a deluxe edition of it. So.
Yeah, Okay.
I didn't know that you did that much counting during the event. No.
Sure, well, I have to keep my skills fresh. Otherwise, you lose it, right? Like,
Take one model off, take 2 models off, take 2 models off, take them all off.
So we've played together. It sounds like.
So, did anybody have any like personal experiences with your army that you wanted that highlight of the event for your warlord? Or
we had a pretty cool moment in the first game where I was trying to overtake some overlords. So they're going on their ships, and I sent marauders to one side and hellstriders to the other, and they're going like, so they're both very fast units. I like max the run roll on both, and so they're just flying along. And both his frigates open fire in each direction, and they totally miss. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm juking and cutting back and forth so fast." And then my next move, I had the Marauder cav got bottled up in the archway. There's no actual effect on the game. And the frigate kind of swoops down like this, trench run, attack run, and then they've got nowhere to juke. And he just like maxed all his rolls, just totally wiped him out, just mulched him with gunfire. And I was like, that was pretty awesome, And it's just the dice turned up that way, and it wasn't like a manufactured thing. It went that way. But we only got there because we took a couple of choices earlier in the game to try to make it an interesting game rather than a overrun or something like that. So that was one of my highlights, I would say.
Well, highlight for me is I think I rolled the Maw on a unit of overlords. I think at least 4 times in a row, maybe 5. And what's worse is it took that many times to eliminate a unit, of course. But I did delete it off the table.
Yeah. Chopped an entire unit of Arcanite company.
Pretty tasty, crunchy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first one was that my first game was against Kenny Lowell, and he had somewhere between 60 and 75 Fire Slayers on the table. Now just imagine an ogre with a deluxe bag of fiery Cheetos. That's how the game went. I was able to just gobble up all those Fire Slayers, which was a lot of fun.
Every hippo situation.
Yeah. So, that sort of thing. And then
become a fire belly after that.
And then Tarkos
get another one in that faction.
Just a Cheetah conversion coming out.
That's a Warhammer joke right there.
And then Tarkos, in the next 2 rounds, I fought Khorne and took out 2 Bloodthirsters, 1 in each battle. The second game, however, killing the Bloodthirster gave him enough tithe points to throw a brass meteor down on Tarkos, and he had 1 wound left. So that didn't.
That was amazing.
It was
fantastic.
Pretty.
I loved it.
It was nice
destruction.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Paul, as the organizer, that sort of thing, what was the favorite moments for you?
The favorite moment was literally just like people looking down into the archways to see if they could get through for the first scenario. The second one, looking through the doors to be like, oh, can I make this through? And then having the monsters, we had it so that the monsters couldn't fly through the doors if the model couldn't fit. So they had to go up over the walls instead. So that created some really cool shots. And my favorite shot was actually, Davey, you had your, I can't think of what the name is. The rock, the Sigor was standing on top of one of the walls and just had this great shot of him like ready to whip this rock at a Lord of Change. It was such a great shot. And then when I showed you later, you were like, yeah, and then he got his face melted and got absolutely destroyed. So that's probably my favorite.
Act fast to get that picture because I had not played Disciples before. I got hit by like 17 spells. And just oh, cool, 43 mortal wounds. I guess I'll take him off. So.
Yeah, so that's probably my favorite story.
Nice. Anything else you guys would want to share to wrap up, and or things that you'd like to see for next year or that sort of thing?
Just that it was pretty cool. Like I've done narrative gaming, with acquaintances and that sort of thing, friends and gaming groups, but I don't think I've ever done like a narrative event, and that was a really cool way of seeing what it could be. So, we helped construct the pack for it. We've had our names attached to it as run it, but we were just one piece of it, and really didn't know how it was going to go. It was really cool to see at our own level and at the big level have it go so well, and made me excited to seek out some more. I mean, I guess I should say there was a short shrift to Steve Herner. I did get to go to his doubles narrative, and I think I've seen some of what he's talked for his event, and I think he's getting fired up. So I'm excited for more narrative events, I guess.
Yeah.
I think for me, the feedback at the end was like it was all pretty positive. But one of the things that I definitely took to heart was that he pushed more into the narrative, right? So the way that I set up the boards, we were running into a building. When we're inside the building, negative one to shooting, or like they expected more rules to actually make that work. And so that was an interesting thought that I hadn't thought of. But the other thing was, you're talking about the brass skulls. Well, if the brass skulls are coming down through the roof, should we have rules for what happens when the building starts collapsing, right? So maybe using some of the Shadespire rules for the terrain and stuff like that. So thinking about what would happen in game and trying to just put a couple little flavor rules in there to help people enjoy the narrative a little bit more, right? Because having a flaming skull coming down and killing Tarkos is kind of a cool visual. But if you're inside of a building and the flaming skull comes down and kills Tarkos, and then like, you know, the marble or whatever from the roof comes down and kills several units around him, well, that's a really, you know, like that's a really interesting narrative story you're not going to get in a match play game. So
yeah, and that's something that Steve Herner does really well, is letting the tables play, you know, that sort of thing. So I think it's definitely something to kind of encourage that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Aaron, any thoughts from you?
You guys covered a lot of it, so I think that is great. Just the only question I have is Rummy. Yeah, all right, well, so moving on. No, just so internationally, the Chaos one, right? Chaos won our event too. Like, was that the case?
Yeah.
Not to bring up bad memories, but
yeah.
So there you go, Davey.
So you say what you do differently is not let Chaos win next time.
Yeah, dude, I wasn't playing for the objectives.
Yeah.
To double down on the destruction.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would have been helpful, sure.
Yeah. For me, so yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, like having this vision for something that could be simple enough for people to run all over the country, all over the world, and give enough for, you know, but meaty enough for people to be willing to step up into it and run an event. That idea, I think, was overwhelmingly proven to be able to happen. Like you didn't need a 30-page rule book or pack to run a narrative event. You know, it was a tight rule set. You know, it certainly could do some things to you know, refine it even more or whatever. I think and obviously the group that we had to work with, Davey and I, and the whole Neon group that I've mentioned over and over, and the pack has listed everybody that was a part of that. Like everybody put in and gave a piece of themselves for it, and that was really cool. One of the things I think I would do differently from that standpoint, I think, you know, one of the things that had some difficulty is when you're working with so many great creatives and trying to come and fit down, get all those ideas down to something, you know, really, it can really go out and do that. So I think one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing differently for next year is have kind of more of the community have points of input on what might happen next with Aristrat, having more, and we're doing it some in our local campaign stuff, but how do we get the community to feel ownership of that story, feel ownership of the event, and, you know, maybe even, you know, like you said, you know, maybe some more times of war that we could add on top of it, et cetera, that are just okay to use, you know, that sort of thing. But maybe it's something that the community can if we get the pack out earlier, maybe the community can add things to it that people could pick and choose from to make an even more enriching experience. So, and something that I would look forward to next year is, just kind of opening it up and having even more community involvement. So.
Right on.
So we've been speaking about this skirmish campaign kind of back and forth. So Eric, do you want to kind of go through and elaborate a little bit more on that now?
Yeah. So the skirmish rules came out. I hadn't had time to play with them much. To Paul, you, myself, and Davey played some. Aaron, you played some of the Hinterlands a rule set that Bottle had come out with, and loved that Hinterlands rule set. It's really cool, and he took a lot of feedback from our playtesting and stuff. So definitely feeling a kinship there. I hadn't played much of the Skirmish, so I wanted an opportunity to play the Skirmish rule set. But I think, like a lot of people, and we talked a little bit briefly about Vince and Tom from the Warhammer Weekly. There's maybe not always the feeling that there's enough meat on the bones for people that have played other Skirmish rule sets, and so they're coming out with some more meat to a campaign system. But before that happened, I was just toying with the idea of, I wanted to, as I do sometimes, I just say, hey guys, let's play this. I want, actually going back before that, Aaron, you and I had talked a little bit previously about trying to add more of an RPG element to the game. Yeah. To kind of like somewhere between the Warhammer Quest that has a very like tight linear story that you just have to follow, and the tabletop Age of Sigmar and Skirmish, where you're just kind of, here's a game, play it, here's a game, play it, here's a game, play it, like something that links them together, but in a way that grows things, but with a GM element. So kind of blah blah blah, throwing a bunch of stuff in there.
Well, like D&D, like had it start from like wargaming, if I understand correctly. So it obviously has a lot of connections there.
So so an inspiring way to create these warbands, these skirmish warbands, but in a way that their stories keep growing, so that there's a beefier campaign element. So I initially tried and mash skirmish gameplay with the Hinterlands. There's a Realm Masters kind of rule set or suggestions on how to start a Realm Masters campaign. So Sam had also had the idea of have one of the players be a GM, and have the other players kind of have these little war bands that they're running through a storyline. So it kind of started there. I was like, hey, would you guys be interested in doing something like this? And resoundingly, you all said, huzzah!
I'm only interested in doing stuff like this.
It was really weird because we weren't at a Ren Fair or anything.
No.
Huzzah is all over the place.
Sure.
So obviously when you get people excited, and the trick with any campaign is how do we all keep that excitement? How does it, push our hobby? How does it, push our getting together and being able to play games, roll dice, and drink some port, or whatever. Like what is it? These are things that just kind of they facilitate all the other things that surround the hobby, that you're hanging out with friends and that sort of stuff.
Sure.
So it began as such. We decided to start a campaign. It's set in the world of Shadespire. We're testing out the skirmish rules as far as the gameplay on the board, and how you pick your warbands, how you build your warbands, etc. And I am acting as the GM, and so I've got a story behind the screen, as it were, that I am feeding to you all. So in upcoming episodes, we're going to share more about the story, more about our warbands, etc., or your warbands, not mine. Although there's characters and stuff that I'm developing, NPCs in the nomenclature, that I can share about. But one of the things that, so let me ask you guys what you thought when I first approached you with that. Besides huzzah, any doubts, any thoughts of like, this is never going to work? Anything like, I sick and tired of hanging out with Eric. Why is he making me do this?
Sure. And it was kind of a forced thing. And admittedly, another huzzah sprung up after that, after the first one you just didn't hear. But I'm actually spending a little bit of my free hobby time also playing like D&D and different RPGs, but that doesn't get any of my models painted. So when you brought this up, it was a great idea to both double down on like my AOS stuff and my scratching that RPG itch. So it was a perfect melding. If you can kill two birds with one stone, you might as well do it.
So says the Cygor.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I was gung-ho in that regard. Plus, I'm not necessarily a match play kind of guy. It seems very what's the word, like very exhibition. I understand too. I'm not good with numbers. It's very like what's the word when you just two basketball teams play? Just
Exhibition.
Exhibition. I kept wanting to say expedition, which is a different thing.
What you're saying is that you don't play match play for anything but money?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Pink slips, right?
Also pink slips. Oh God, I could win some cool armies. I'd get real good real quick. But I always wanted something more lasting, like something that stuck around a little bit longer, which I mean inherently is what narrative play is and what we talk about for the most part. And this was just another way to sort of flesh that out and just something that stuck around longer. That appeals to me.
Yeah, for me, I definitely like the role-playing aspect. I used to do role-playing a lot more when I was younger and kind of fell out of it, did more board games, but that's something I've definitely missed a lot of. So I was very happy to have that aspect being included in this campaign for sure.
For me, it was a cool way to stretch the idea of what narrative gaming for Age of Sigmar is. You know, we just finished the narrative event. Eric and I kind of toyed with some, you know, our own little narrative campaign back in 8th. And this seemed like, all right, you know, like and to be fair, like when Coalescence was designed, it was designed as almost a hybrid, you know, like we've talked about, there's not necessarily narrative gaming and match play, and, you know, they are way apart from each other. Like there's a spectrum anywhere in between. And so this is just, further down the narrative end of the spectrum, really kind of pushing it as far as as we might be able to go. So I thought it was cool to see something new as far as that.
Cool.
And just an additional, just another way to look at it is like I'm pretty into the fluff of the world, right? And this is an opportunity to sort of get down at the ground level, like on an individual basis or a warband basis to like sort of insert yourself into it. You don't necessarily get a lot of that, but just you're setting up 2 armies across from each other and, you know, playing out of the box. AOS, playing the skirmish and playing this hybrid really gets, you know, puts you in the role, puts you in the driver's seat of, you know, your general, and then making decisions as he would make decisions or she. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, again, kind of same way I approached Coalescence is that I'm skeptical that we're going to be able to sustain this, right? And so I know that a campaign in general, like we've done some campaigns, and like every campaign, they sort of can peter out if something else comes along, or if you get into something different or whatever. But you think of like RPGs, you think of Dungeons and Dragons, you think of the height of that right now, and those games and those groups can play together for years, right? And so you know, it's something that I think can help stick us with it a little bit longer. And so there's a few things that I pulled from there as far that are a little bit different than what Hinterlands and what Skirmish, you know, a little bit of both. So think of your average, you know, RPG party, you know, your adventuring group. And there's 4 of you. It's the 3 of you and our friend Kenny. And each of you has a hero. And that hero has brought along a warband. And that all your hero and your warbands all together, all 4 of you, make up your party. And while you will be experiencing this adventure together, and you will need each other to kind of, you know, sum is greater than or the whole is greater than some of its parts.
I don't need anybody.
Yep. But you'll also be in some instances competing, right? And so, you know, like, you know, can I throw this? Can I dodge this hero or this bad guy and make so-and-so deal with it instead of me, right? Can I snake this treasure, you know, and you know, get out before everyone else? You know, I'm fulfilling some obligations, you know, whatever. But then, you know, like kind of creating some tensions and that sort of stuff. But it being something that you're still going through a larger arc together. So there can be these, and so I'm coining it coopetition. So,
and if our Silver Tower experience is anything to go by, there's no way anything could go wrong here.
So one time my priest needed some experience and everyone was hogging it. So I went ahead and opened a door. That's all I did.
If you just would have healed, like your one and only job.
Yeah, you had one job.
And it
wasn't opening doors. Yeah.
Wasn't getting XP evidently. So there's that element. The other thing I want this to be too is something that's very simple. Again, like Coalescence, trying to find that simple element, something that will be easy for you guys. Like not a ton of administration, not a ton of administration for me. And there's no like, unlike a D&D that has like a lot of like character sheets or stat blocks that tell you exactly how much XP to give or that sort of stuff to grow. There's nothing like that for AOS.
Then why did I have to fill out a character sheet?
What's that?
Then why did I have to fill out a character sheet?
Well, we ended up changing that, right?
Yeah,
we started with this character sheet. I tried to use the skirmish sheet or a template based on the skirmish sheet that's provided. And what I tried to, but it didn't, that in itself didn't have anything narrative about it either, which is interesting.
Sure.
And one of the things I want to mention too, I know that Warhammer Weekly, Vince and Tom, they've got some things coming out and I'm excited to see those and I'm really wanting to test some of those out. So use this group to do some play testing. But I came up with something that I don't know is a part of what they're doing or not. And it's really focused around the Renown idea. So in Skirmish, every model has a Renown value. And it's really, I think, as far as I can tell, is just a fancy way of saying these are the points. Back in Mordheim, it was how many crowns, right? In other games, it's how many credits or whatever. It's just it's a currency. I really wanted to take that and amp it up a bit. And so in this campaign, Renown is literally the reputation of your group, right? And denoted by a number. So a hero that starts off at 25 Renown, right, is a pretty well-regarded character within its faction. And so it has a reputation, and then we're starting off with 25 Renown, etc. And so you get those in there. But what happens when you beat a level Renown spell? I'm speaking it. I can't be speaking it wrong. Come on.
You would think so. Yeah.
So you've got this Renown, this number, and as you accomplish obstacles, so through a battle plan, so take the 4 warbands as a party through a preset battle plan. At the end of that, depending on their major win, minor win, etc., they're going to either they may earn a certain number of Renown, and that's a growth of reputation. And what that means, instead of saying, hey, you can just spend this here, 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 what they're doing is justifying that what happens is when your Renown goes up, when your reputation goes up, people are drawn to you. So you may have a new warband member say, hey, I'd really love to come and work with you or follow you. Your hero has the leadership or ability now to the charisma even to have more people underneath them and follow his or her orders. As you gain artifacts, if you pick up this goblet of such and such, and this is set in Shadespire,
the fly-blown chalice. No,
yeah, that's something that would get around. People would kind of hear about it, and therefore your Renown would go up again. If you are a warband worthy of carrying such an artifact, that's going to increase your Renown, and then again, more people may follow you. Or there's going to be some other things like maybe, well, I'll talk about it in a minute. But so your Renown grows, and you have to justify it through story elements. You're bringing in a new warband member is based off of things that are happening in the game. And what I hope is, I know you guys have, like, Davey, I know you have some Arcanauts waiting to join up. But I'm hoping, too, that we get into a situation where, like, you know what? An Arcanaut's not really going to fit into that story because what happened here is so cool. I've got to bring a Fire Slayer in, or I've got to, something like that, because you're like, this is the type of character that would have joined my group as a result of X, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that the story influences some of that. Now, I know you guys all each have some baked in stories, and I've created some space for you to bring in more of the same kind of thing, right? It'll work. Mm-hmm. But I want you to work with what inspires you. So instead of a character sheet, and I'll show some examples of it down the road. We're still, again, all this is kind of experimentation. But the sheet we're working on, the Renown sheet, is kind of a list, a journal. And each entry is, hey, this is, the first entry is such and such a hero stands up and decides to quest towards Shadespire, and he has a certain amount of renown, and with him and then he or she brings along this henchman, and then this henchman, etc. And as you accomplish new things that give renown, you write in an explanation of what just happened. And as you add in new members of your war band, you tell a quick little 2-sentence story of why they joined or what happened. And so now we start creating this little cake lasagna of narrative.
7-bean dip.
This Catafron lasagna.
Are we going to get fed throughout this?
Yeah.
Cool.
We were last time.
Yeah, that's true.
So now the other thing, so there's this, hopefully this really simple mechanic of gaining renown and bringing more, what does that renown mean for the composition of your warband and your strengths and weaknesses, etc. But then where I know that Vince and Tom are working on kind of a wound and injury type of thing. What we're going to be working out is kind of a loss of renown. So rather than individual, now we may play test with what they're coming out with, but right now what we're thinking is instead of looking at your individual models and saying this one's got an injury, so it's -1 this, or this one's got less wounds now, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Things that would make you want to get rid of them, right? Now your renown goes down. If you get a major loss in a scenario, your renown goes down, and maybe one of your warband members says, you know what, this wasn't the party I thought it was, and they leave, right? And so
they'll be back.
they wouldn't dare.
They might be, they just might be. And then another mechanic, and this gets into kind of the RPG side of things, is that I have the ability as the game masters to present the party with quests. So maybe they meet an NPC, and the NPC says, well, if you do this thing for me, and they maybe add it as
10 boar hearts. Yeah.
Right. What we're going to have this is kind of like a risk mechanic where the whole party as a whole, or an individual warband, could wager part of their renown and say, you know what, I will risk my reputation on being able to do this. And if they come back, and if they go out and do this and bring it back, they could be successful and they would gain more renown for doing so. Or they could say, you know what, I don't think I'm going to end up doing this. And so then they lose the renown for having said they were going to do something and not being able to complete it. And so this is this interesting mechanic of growth in renown and reputation, but then also risking it and potential of losing it, and have like enemies take advantage of that, and opportunities slip through their fingers because maybe they don't have enough reputation to really be given such responsibility or opportunities. So that's my way too long of an explanation of it. What are you guys thinking about that?
You guys better not make me lose renown. Is I think the gist of what we got going here.
Well, you need to drum better. That's all I gotta say.
Impossible. I'm drumming the best. But no, I like the system. I like the risk and reward. I feel like, I don't know, maybe some of the campaigns that I've been in the past, there isn't often enough risk, or like, you're fighting with sort of padded gloves. And so I like knowing that you can lose, but you're not afraid of dying. You're not afraid of eliminating your warband. You're just losing some part of it, losing some renown. So there's risk involved, but like you're not at risk of losing everything. It's a good middle ground that you don't see all that often.
One of the tenets of the Caradron Code is there's no reward without risk. So there you go. It is an amendment, I believe.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So I've got your hero's approval then?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kept us alive through the age of chaos.
My Tarvis, he doesn't see anything as a risk anymore. It's guaranteed.
It's all reward.
Success. Yeah, all reward, up and down.
I mean, it's all fighting, so it's all reward, right?
Sure.
So.
I mean, he should be so lucky.
No, everybody's just following Loki here. That's all that's going on. Everybody just knows that he's the smartest. So, he has a system. He's good.
Says the guy who hears voices in a compass.
So as you can see,
compass, huh?
as you can see, I mean, obviously I've got some all in friends here that are really getting into the narrative. But that's what I'm hoping too. Is it like a D&D game, right? Where people are getting to their characters quite a bit, tell the stories, really internalize it. Like you guys are definitely starting to. Like we were able to put in enough kind of back and forth and conversation before our first kind of get together that on the day of, you guys were already playing the part and kind of feeling it and getting into it, which is really cool. What we've already played the first campaign night. I would like us to get a little bit further down the road before we start sharing our warbands kind of backstories and information. I want to wait until our journals get a little bit deeper. Our 7-layer dip becomes like a 12-layer dip.
What are the 5 extra layers?
They're Cataphrone souls.
Decide.
Cinnamon,
powdered shade glass.
Okay, perfect.
And that way too is that I also want to make sure, like I said, a little skepticism is I want to make sure that this is something that we enjoy playing, that we enjoy doing. It seems like it's a pretty good bet. But can we sustain it? Can we keep going with it? Is it something that, that we're going to have on? And, if we can, then this will be a regular part of the Mortal Realms multicast, is that we'll share a little bit of the progress of the campaign, tell stories of where we're at, what's going on, what we've learned, what you guys have learned. I'm also hoping to do some individual videos about get into more specifics about the what I am coining as the Renown or Ruin campaign system. I'm just going to start branding it right out of the gate because that's what I do.
TM.
And look forward to sharing that with you guys, hopefully on this channel, but through some individual conversations to the camera. But maybe I'll bring some of you guys on to chat about things, and I'd love to showcase your warbands in better ways, but etc. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see if this multimedia empire gets off the ground. Any other thoughts you guys want to chat or talk about the campaign that we're embarking in?
I'm excited.
Yeah. Tune in next time.
Yeah, next one's scheduled, right? We're on the books.
Next week, right?
Ooh, I hope so.
Yeah. My only thought was just it's really nice to have a specific place in AOS now, right? With releasing the skirmish, they specifically released a city, right? Yeah. It's an actual place instead of an 8 realms, and maybe there's something in the 8 realms. There's a bunch of buildings. It is a setting, a very specific setting right now. So it's nice to be able to have space to breathe within that.
Yep.
I think it lends itself really well to what we're doing here, what you specifically are doing here.
Thank you. No, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, having Shadespire, and some of it is just wanting to kind of like sink into the skirmish book a bit. Hopefully we can do that and be able to play our campaign, but have some feedback on the skirmish rule set as well. So
looking forward to telling and hearing some good stories.
Stories? Interesting.
Well, why don't we jump over? Why don't we jump over to the story phase, guys?
I spent all morning reading, so I really want to, before I forget it all. You want to talk about the story phase?
I don't want to just talk about it. I want to get into it.
He wants to get into it. All right. The story phase. Ooh. Is that how you used to do it?
That was nice.
Yeah, all right. So in the story phase, we delve into the stories, characters, creatures, and environments of the 9 realms. So I believe today we're going to be talking about Hallowed Knights, Plague Garden, Josh Reynolds. I think you said it at the top, but you can find the hardback in stores, but you can go to blacklibrary.com and get all the different formats. I think later in the year there's going to be a Kindle version or a paperback version, iBooks, whatever you want, you can get it. So let's get into it. What I wanted to start actually. This book is great, and if we've been following the Hallowed Knights story, to my mind, this is kind of like a season 2 of the series of the Hallowed Knights. If the Realm Gate Wars was season 1, it very much is a continuation of that storyline. And so if this was a TV show, what would the previously on Hallowed Knights, what would that show? What does a reader need to know about going into this book? I'll give you an example. Gardus got killed by somebody. I didn't actually read that book.
Great,
chased-
great previously on.
Yeah. Well, this is cumulative. This is we're all contributing here. Anyways, he was killed at one point. Yeah, he was killed by I think maybe a great and clean one, possibly.
Yeah, we think he's been killed twice. He was about to be consumed, so he went into the realm of Nurgle already, which is significant, and fought his way out alive, which was a spectacular thing. And then later in the campaign to find Alariel, he was about to be consumed again by a great unclean one, and one of his fellows managed to pick up. It might have been Rasmus. But picked up a boltstorm crossbow and shot him in the back of the head to reforge him before his soul was consumed.
Sure.
So save him by killing him.
Headshot.
We also saw. What's that?
Go ahead. So that's a scene, right? Our previous.
That happened. Yep. And then I think the second time he died, he was fighting on the great Torque. Was in a prolonged battle there, and managed to bait the spider fangs into pushing the Nurgle back, but in order to do that, he had to end up jumping off the side of the Great Torque, I believe. So we know Gardus has died at least twice already, and we'll see more. He's showing some of the results of that.
Sure. Also, in a previous book, we know that Torglug the Despised, I believe, destroyed by Celestant Prime, and proceeds to get reformed.
Audio cut out.
Oh no! I was making a good point too.
We'll never know.
Yeah, I know it's true. So, but also previously on, we'll see the scene of Torglug the Despised getting defeated, incinerated. I don't know, just destroyed by the Celestant Prime, right? And proceeding to be reforged into a Stormcast. Also going to play a big part of the book here as well. What other important facets are there?
So that's Tornus, a Knight Venator, and he has appeared in the Realmgate Wars at the end, the God Beasts, where he was working in Garan and what was it, the shoals or the
Sky Shoals,
Sky Shoals, and was able to zero out and take out a great unclean one that was plugging and kind of muddying those waters. And was pretty fierce there as well. He made it all over the place chasing.
Rotspawn took him out.
So chasing some of those Nurgle baddies, getting revenge.
Sure. Furthermore, we've seen Orius? No, I'm sorry, wrong guy. But Tarsus the Bullheart in the Nagash audio dramas. It's a small part in this particular book, but we want to know that he's been stolen, I guess, by Nagash, and his Lord Relictor Ramus was trying to help save him, and was on a quest to sort of chase down the vampire. What's his name? Manfred. Anyways,
those are from the audio dramas, and Torgus went to find Nagash, and he found Nagash. And Nagash kept him as a prize. He kind of smote him, and his soul did not reach back, and that was, I think, one of the first times that had happened in these stories. Ramus has been on a path of vengeance through the realm of beasts and back, and trying to chase down Manfred, and then now has his wishes he could be going back to get him.
Yeah, exactly. So those are some, I thought, key points, key information that somebody needs to know going into it. I don't know if there's any more at this point.
Tigris. Is it Tigris?
Tigris,
the Prosecutor Prime.
Yep.
Had gotten a little bit of a rat spell.
Yeah, he got turned into, it sounded like the old dreaded 13th from prior editions, where he got turned into a weird rat thing, and Alariel, it was left kind of vague whether Alariel kind of ended him permanently or not, but he popped back up again later in Wardens of the Everqueen, and it was not clear exactly what happened. And here Josh Reynolds spells it out for us. He's one of the first to have been reforged by someone other than Sigmar, so Alariel reforged him.
Sure.
I suppose also to be clear is that Torglug, the Despised, and Gardus and Grymn, and all the Hallowed Knights throughout the Realmgate Wars were fighting against each other. Were the the antagonists and protagonists.
Yeah.
So they, direct throughout that space. So Tornus now a Hallowed Knight, a Knight Venator, and then Gardus. So this is where our story begins.
Yeah. So we could probably just dive into it. Maybe we start talking about where are we dealing with? Like, what's the setting here of this book? It's a good place
we start in Azir, and we are kind of in a reforging places, kind of like a lack of a better term, kind of a staging room or space for the Stormcast, and we're locked into Gardus, and he's doing some sword play. But he's also kind of being haunted by some of the visions of his past, of the recent past. Not necessarily him prior to becoming a Stormcast, but with his recent events in the garden, etc. So we start with him. Some friends come around him. Zephocles, who is an Astral Templar, which are known to be, very kind of beastly, etc. We meet Sister Cassandora, which is pretty cool. And throughout this book, from the leaders, actually throughout the ranks, and some of this Sister Cassandora is a Lord-Celestant as well. Female Stormcast abound here, from the adjudicators to the liberators to prosecutors to night level, etc. Their brothers and sisters are being that brothers and sisters terms are being used abound here. So Josh Reynolds does a fantastic job of just making it a part of the tapestry, that men and women are fighting side by side here, which is really cool. So there's kind of this exchange, and that they need to be going to something. But then we also get introduced to Lord-Celestant Silas, also a Hallowed Knight, and speaking with his Lord Venator, who we learn is Tornus. So Tornus is working with, or Knight Venator is working with Silas, and they're also on their way to this place together, and they're all meant. So we've learned that other Hallowed Knight officers, for lack of a better term, leadership, are working their way towards the Sepulchre of the Faithful, which is a mausoleum in honor of the quote-unquote truly dead. Was that? Okay. And so this mausoleum is something that every Stormcast host has. So it's just that theirs is named the Sepulchre of the Faithful. So not unique except for in name. And there's a ceremony, and this ceremony is in honor of Tarsus the Bullheart, who we just spoke about, who's in the grasp of Nagash. What's interesting here is that there's a little bit of politics going on. For all intents and purposes, Tarsus he's certainly not returned to Azir, but it's also said that he's not necessarily dead, that he's held there. But this is a place that they hold this ceremony, and Sigmar has asked for them to hold this ceremony. And so they take a spike and they bash it into this stone. And there's a number of other spikes here that have already been put into it. But again, these are lost. The idea is that they're never going to return. We
talk politics. What we're talking about here is understandably Ramus, who is the relictor for the Bullhearts. He's not on board with writing him off. Like to him, this is Sigmar saying, we're going to write off Tarsus. Yep. We're not getting him back. And so he's trying to find someone to go against Sigmar's wishes. He's looking to mount a rescue mission, basically.
Well, and it's surprising to me because given what we know the rest of the book and how to the bitter end they're willing to go to rescue somebody, and not even a Lord-Celestant, but just a lowly Castellant. I'm surprised no one took him up on his offer. And this book obviously was about the Hallowed Knights and Still Souls in Nurgle, but that point really stuck with me.
But it had to have been intentional, right? I'm
sure.
So,
right. I would say, because we don't, at this point in the book, we don't know what happens, right? We only know that Tarsus has been captured and that he's held there, and that Sigmar has not let Ramus pursue this because Nagash is a potential ally, right?
Well, with friends like these, huh?
What's that?
Well, and with friends like these, who needs enemies?
Right. And you do have to look at it in this point. It was he does ask Gardus, and what they say here is that he asked everybody else and then Gardus last, because if Gardus had said no, nobody else would have said yes, right?
Yeah.
But Gardus is like, why would I go against Sigmar, right? Why would I? That's not something we should do.
Sure.
So him at this point of Rasmus asking him this is not someone who would go willingly to face a god to get one soul back.
Well, and I think this is a really interesting point, is that Gardus is positive that this is exactly what he's supposed to be doing at this point in time, right? When he asks them, he's like, no, this is what I know the approach will be. This is what I know is supposed to be going on right now. That becomes, I think, a theme later on in the book as we're exploring that idea. But the mausoleum itself was very interesting for me because it's basically like a prisoner of war memorial. But they're still out. There's at least some feeling that they're still out there. And this is something that I had not really seen, or at least been exposed to in the Age of Sigmar fiction, of the idea of there are lost souls, even in this new reforged Stormcast idea. I know people have been taken or whatever, but I always thought it was the understanding that they would at some point be rescued, right? Like something would happen. But this is definitely a nail in the coffin of being like, nope, we're just literally going to say they've done their duty. We're moving on. No, it's interesting.
Now I think something to really make sure we spend time on up here is that we get the very first meeting between Tornus and Gardus, since Tornus has been reforged, and Silas came over to introduce Tornus and asked that Gardus take him on his next mission, which is planned to go down to Giran and join back with Grym, which he hasn't since he died in the in finding Illyriel. What did you guys think about that kind of first meeting?
I think Gardus behaved the way you'd expect him to. Like he's a class act through and through. And so if it would have gone any worse, I would have been disappointed. I think they behaved the way that you'd expect the characters to do, which I guess is a weird way to praise it, but I liked it.
They talk a lot about Tornus being, he's still apart from the rest of the Hallowed Knights, and especially given his history as Torglug. He's not actually, and it mentions that he's not the only one to have been reforged after having been devoted to the Chaos powers, and that's actually briefly alluded to in one of the Call of Archaon stories, just in a passing mention. So he wasn't even the first that we saw as readers. Which one?
Yeah.
I'll talk to you offline about it. We'll keep it spoiler free for people in case we wrap back around to it. But
good call.
But I was thinking about another reason that I'm thinking about. So Hallowed Knights are defined as the Storm Host, where every member of them are someone who's called out for Sigmar's aid at some point before becoming reforged. Did Tornus actually do that? So this is my question to you, right? The only time it might have happened was when he was down, because he was the defender of the life wells, and he was thrown in a awful pit for 76 days, and on the 77th day he emerged as Torglug. So maybe he called out there, but this is potentially another reason that he's set aside.
Well, and I would say I think in the last his last moments as Torglug, there were moments of awe that he had of the Celestant Prime in the power that he had, and wishing that he himself had that power too, thinking that Nurgle was the provider of that, but maybe not, right? Yeah. And what's interesting is because the Hallowed Knights are the faithful. The question here is, does Torglug have faith? In whom? Does he have faith just because he got cleansed, does that mean he no longer has faith in Nurgle? Or who does he have more faith in? And that's what everyone's questioning. Is does he have faith?
Well, everyone except for Gardus, right? Gardus is like, he's reforged, he was Sigmar. That's all there is to it.
He's good enough for Sigmar, right? So he's good enough for me, I think.
Exactly. Which is its own faith in a way, right? Like that's his faith. Yeah.
Well, and Sigmar interrupts this kind of gathering of the Hallowed Knights, kind of where after the ceremony they would go and have the meat and cheese platters, talk about amongst each other about, hey, try and be pleasantries and stuff like that.
Like in a church basement.
Sigmar comes in and asks everybody to leave but Gardus and Tornus. And he reveals to Gardus that he's asked him to take Tornus so that he might demonstrate what it means to treat Tornus as one of theirs, right? And lead by example. We'll find out a little bit later, more insight into that. Meanwhile, down in Garan, Grym is doing his thing. We get introduced to them slaying beasts, and they're tracking the Order of the Fly to a stronghold, and it's protected by a knightly order. So another case where, if you're wondering where the Bretts went, they got corrupted by Nurgle, and they are being of honor in the service of the Lord of Flies.
Although the really interesting point to me was that the knights themselves are not mounted, right?
Yeah.
They don't have horses.
This isn't the first time we've seen these guys. They actually showed up at the end of the Sylvaneth Legends of the Age of Sigmar Sylvaneth book. Josh Reynolds wrote The Outcasts, and many of these characters that are referenced, Cousin Gorl and all this. I think there was what do they call them? Pallid Woes, young Pallid Woes was not seen from again. And these guys have honest affection and good memories of each other and all that sort of thing. Anyway, so this Order of the Fly is really cool way of talking about these dudes. But yeah, so whether or not they're actually supposed to be Bretonnia, you see a lot of those links because they are this knightly order.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So then there's kind of two characters to get to know. There's Gatrog, which is he's a Duke of Festerfane. I kept wanting to say Dookie of Festerfane because it says he calls them Duchy or something like that.
Sure.
That would be the name of the realm. So a Duke rules a duchy.
I gotcha. So for Nurgle to be called a Dookie that's not right.
He'd probably take it as a compliment, though.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will just say he's the Dookie of Festerfane. A little bit. He quested for part of his things. He quested for a drink from the holy fly-blown chalice, and then his superior, whose name is Bubonicus, and who actually did drink from the fly-blown chalice of the lady of the
Canker something.
Yeah. Canker
who is a daughter of Nurgle. And they protect the third circle, which contains a cauldron and what is called the Gate of Weeds. So we know this, or we get to know this, but Grym doesn't know this yet, that there is a realm gate here that has been warped, that they are trying to kind of get active to start bringing in demons that would be a direct line to the Garden of Nurgle. We get some new people in here. We get a Knight Venator named Enyo, who's the fastest and sharpest shot of all the Knight Venators in the Hallowed Knights. They talk about this castle is kind of like grown, and out
of what? Grown out of what?
Sargassum.
Sargassum.
So we get Sargassum. So look it up. If you read this book, which we encourage that you do, the Sargassum, you'll see it. And it's basically algae of sort. It's plant life. It's been hardened and grown into this. But the other thing that's really crazy about how they built this place, the walkways and the scaffolding,
messed up.
Living Sylvaneth.
Oh. Can you imagine being wrapped in seaweed and then just like sitting there watching terrible things happen?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Well, having terrible things happen to you.
That's true. It's like dryad sushi.
Oof.
And so then so they're coming through. They're battling through, and Grym and all of the people need to. So there's this plan. They need to crash through. They need to get to this gate. They need to outwit the they've got to siege this thing, right? They have to outwit the people that are guarding it, and they do so. Not without obviously some crazy things happening. There's a moment where Balefire hits a liberator. It turns him into this crazy beast. In which
Chaos spawn, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, they don't.
Well, I don't know. Yeah,
it's pretty.
I'm with Aaron on this one. Yeah.
Oh, I think you can throw chaos spawn at anything, and it's a good.
Well, I think they explicitly say it, but
I was interested in the beasts that were on the bridge itself, right? Because they seemed like something that was a little bit new to me because they had this.
They were brooding out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I got two questions at this point, or two points. One, they make it a point to say that Grym wants to move with speed, which I thought was interesting because he's historically, I mean, if you're a Lord Castellant, you're going to be the shield of your whatever, war host or storm host or something like that. But given that he's been thrust into this role, not that he's being the Lord-Celestant, but he's taken that role on, I would have imagined him to take the slow defensive route, but instead he wants to move at speed because he wants to, whatever reason, outsmart them by acting quickly, which I thought was a weird juxtaposition considering what his role typically is supposed to be.
He also wants to have this place all cleaned up when Gardus arrives.
Yeah,
he's a present.
Prove himself. Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely some haste there, but he also makes references often to his role versus Gardus's role. He is the shield, Gardus is the sword. And hey, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. And he's excited as excited as Grym gets, for Gardus to be back so they can play their roles again. Because he's been leading for too long.
Yeah, he doesn't want this anymore. Second question real quick, is Balefire the Nurgle equivalent of Warp Fire? Like, I don't know that I've come across Balefire all that often.
Yeah, I think it might be a Josh Reynolds thing. Again, like when he had the Knights of the Order, who were riding on horses in Outcast, they were using Balefire there. And I don't know that I've seen it too much before that. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
So,
I liked it.
Yeah, so it had a very mutative property to it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So they get through. So they manage to break through these spaces. Two things happen while they're breaking through here. One, Gatrog, I think, gets...
There's a big collapse, basically. He gets crushed under a bunch of stuff. He throws his shield up at the last minute, but he's basically crushed under a pile of Sargasso.
And then Grym goes up against Bubonicus. And
basically on his own, no less. Like,
yeah,
purposes.
And spoiler, obviously, this whole thing, if you don't know about what we do here, these are all spoilers. So he goes up against Bubonicus. He through a little bit of a definitely a tight battle. He ends up killing Bubonicus, and Bubonicus falls forward into him and vomits up maggots and such that fall into his mask, Grym's mask, and even thinks he gets some down his throat. And he's not sure what to, it's his throat's burning, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Ipecac time.
A really important moment here. And so obviously, Nurgles
he should get himself tested.
Disgusting. But then this is also where Morbus realizes then that there is a corrupted gate here. I want to make another note. There's another, so Ramus while they're up in Azir makes a point of talking about what price are we paying for this war, right? Is the price too high? And then again down here, Aetius is another character that we Liberator Prime that we get introduced to, and he also is starting to feel like, hey, we're losing too many brothers and sisters, and so it feels like not everybody's feeling this way, but there's a few voices that are starting to kind of feel like, what's it worth to us? Like, who's going to rescue us, kind of thing.
Only the faithful. Oh, is that what you were doing? Oh, I'm sorry.
So Grym realizes that they can kind of feel it, that they've been here before. They've been in this situation before, back at the Gate of Dawn. Is that right?
Yep.
That's a place.
And so they've felt this before. So Grym says, you know what? I do gates. Gates are my thing. I'm gonna go down and find this gate. Morbus, the Lord Relictor, you take care of things here. So they kind of split up. At this point, or just, more fighting happens, and then Gardus and his retinue land. Boom. And they're kind of inside the citadel near the cauldron. And so there's a number of characters we get introduced to here. There's Kadok Kel, who's a Lord Azeros or Knight Azeros, who refers to himself often as the last Prince of Ekron. And he's in flight, and Tornus is sent to follow with him. Kadok obviously doesn't have a lot of love for Tornus. He's pretty cold to him, but he is very warm to killing things and a little bloodlusty.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the least likable Stormcast I've read. Like he's pretty
one of the most effective Stormcasts that I've read.
Yeah, fair.
Two different perspectives.
Sure.
But we do get some insight into Tornus feeling uncomfortable with what Kadok is doing, right? Mm-hmm. Things that Torglug would have easily done, but Tornus is not feeling great about it. There's some more debate here between Tornus and Enyo about free will and duty, and do we have choices, and that sort of thing, which is interesting. I don't know if you guys want to expound on that or found anything interesting there.
Well, in a way, I feel like this is going to maybe, I hope anyways, touch on maybe future storylines or future approaches, knowing that, like, not every Stormcast is just lockstep with what Sigmar wants. And you remember when AOS first came out, and one of the big complaints about Stormcast was that they were all very faceless, nameless, individuals. Not only are we getting names, not only are we getting characteristics, but we can see how different opinions they can have about the way they're approaching things. There's way more variety than I ever thought there was ever going to be in the personalities of these Stormcasts, and I welcome it.
Yeah, and I think, it plays into, as we get along, is like what decisions are left up to them to make, and what stuff is are they only working on the directives of Sigmar, or do they need to be able to make their own decisions, right? Or do some things, do they have the capacity to do that? Let's see. So one of the other things to mention in here is that Tornus sees a bunch of, and Tigris also, they see a bunch of slaves that have been captured in, kind of like hanging cages, etc. And so they spend some time freeing them. There's a sense too there of, like, again, what's the cost? If we win this battle, but we do nothing for these humans that are these slaves, then what are we fighting for?
Yeah, was it worth it?
So we need to take some time, to free them and get them out, etc. And so they do that, which also means that in this battlefield, it takes some of their resources not only to free them, but also to protect them, right? If they were to free them only to let them die, that's also not great, right?
Sure. To put it simply, yes. Not great. Not great.
Not great.
Could be better.
Yeah. Room for improvement.
So then we get we wrap up the surface battle. Everything's like up on the surface. Everything's almost done. There's slaves are freed. A lot of the Order of the Fly has retreated into boats, and that have left and are out to sea. They're kind of cleaning up things here and there. We get a little bit of conversation between some of the humans. We meet Yara of Demesnes, and I think we learn that Gardus is in his previous life was from Demesnes.
That sounds right.
So there's some connection there.
A long time ago, though.
Yeah.
Far long ago.
And so they, are kind of what they, Tornus is moving around trying to do some things, and he pulls it. He sees some movement underneath some scaffolding, some sargassum, and he goes down and he pulls it up.
I think we said it like 2 or 3 times now. Let's keep a tally.
And who pops it up? Who pops up from that their wreckage?
Got something. Got Reg.
Gatrog. Yeah.
Gatrog. No, I was close. So
I love this guy. Like he's I love the Order of the Fly in this whole thing, because they have this. One of the things Josh Reynolds is doing better than about anyone else is making antagonists and villains that you have some chance of identifying with, which makes them that much more interesting. It means when they pop up, it's not just like a, whatever finger waggling villain, like, ooh, I'm going to ruin the world. Like Gatrog really believes he's on the side of right. Like Nurgle is good because of these reasons, like because he's freed us from the tyranny of hope. Anyway, which doesn't come up in this particular scene. He comes up and he's like, "Oh, thank you. I would have been trapped forever. Let me return the favor." And starts getting after him. Trying to fight him. But it's just one of many scenes that I really enjoy Gatrog in. But he is surrounded, outnumbered, and right before he's killed, because Kadok, I think, shows up. He's, I'm gonna straight run this guy through and saves Tornus, but Tornus stays his hand. And this is kind of the thing that we've seen him struggling with is, we've been just tearing our way through here. How many of these guys that we're just mercilessly ripping up or melting away could actually be redeemed like I was. And specifically he notices that Gatrog here is able to, although it's quite painful to him, he's able to survive the light of Kadok's beacon, which is either an incredible amount of fortitude or denotes some other possible remaining element of purity is the working theory that Tornus is going with, which he can detail a little more later.
I think one of the things that Tornus did not expect was how, I don't know, gleeful or joyful that some of the Stormcast were to be killing these Nurgle, right? I don't think he expected that, as it were, the satisfaction and violence that he had as, Torglug to show up again on the opposite side. Especially Kadok's character is very much the machine for how that moves forward. So,
sure, like he and we as the audience, I think, expected the Stormcast to be made of better stuff sometimes than that.
So then what they end up doing then is chaining him up, Gatrog up, and kind of being ready to take him back to Azir or somehow get the Celestant Prime to smash him with a hammer.
Yeah.
Like, let's line up a bunch of guys and be like, "Hey, did this one work? Did this one work?" I mean, that's the plan.
It's like the easiest game of whack-a-mole.
We get a little bit insight into Morbus as well. He's kind of there to cleanse the lands and guide fallen souls. They talk a little bit more. We get to learn a lot about Lord Relictors in this book. He talks about these 12 rights, and that he's strengthened by the dead. He gets insights and learns things from the dead, and that spirits cling to him like a second cloak, and which is just this really cool thing. And of the rights, the first 4 of the 12 rights, so there's this voice inside of every Relictor's head, a voice demanding obedience, a voice calling him to give himself over to the right owner of these souls.
Can you do the voice real quick?
What does the voice say? Tell me what the voice says.
Oh, no, whatever you just said, like that, those things.
Oh. It's English. He's English, isn't he?
Probably.
British?
Sure.
It's Nagash.
I can't do that.
Spoilers, guys, come
on. So Nagash is calling.
Sure.
So the first 4 of the 12 rights that Relictors learn is just about resisting that voice. So it's kind of a cool thing.
Pretty important then, it sounds like.
Yeah, so these
We've
mantras.
Seen some before with Ionis Cryptborn, is talking some about the relationship with death and with Nagash, and they know that they're stealing Nagash's due. So certainly the Lord Relictors, this whole reforging thing, they're bearing a lot of the burden. And it's been talked about how they have some role in that reforging process, although not really explicitly laid out very often. We'll see a lot more of it here in a bit.
Yep. So he's using the power of the storm to cleanse the lands and calling such winds that push back the waters and cleanse the water. The lightning cleanses the water, turns it to steam. But they have to descend now. He and Gardus descend now to go and find Grymn, who is below the surface. And when they get to the gate, what do they find?
Just his burned and battered lantern floating in. It's someone has to like reach down in the putrid water and like, there's something glowing under here, and pull it up, and like here's his lantern on its own, which is bad sign. So, and
then flash to Grymn. And where's Grymn at?
Who knows?
No, that's what he asks, but he realizes flying to him, so.
He wakes up drowning, which is one of my least favorite ways to wake up.
It's low on the list.
Yeah. Easily in the top 5.
So he's plunging through the gate, basically. And he's confused. It's this thing. He doesn't know if he's falling down or upwards, and trying to figure out where this voice is talking to him, tell him to give up. And then, but he managed to fight his way to the surface and breaks the surface. And he actually has 6 other Stormcast with him, right?
Yep. So there's a number of others, and I don't know if that's all that went with him. But it may have been. I don't know if it says if that's, but that's who he's able to pull back up.
It would make sense because there are 7 of them that fell into the realm of Nurgle.
And his dog, or his Griffhound Talon. And so they land in the space. They orient themselves, but then they are attacked by there's a boat. They get attacked. They fight. Each of the 6 other Stormcast fall, and their soul. What happens is unexpected, but expected. Their souls do not return to Azir.
Right. They're in Nurgles' garden. They're not within the 8 realms, and so they can't be seen. So even in Nagash's realm, it's still one of the 8 mortal realms. And but for Nagash managing to trap Tarsus Bullheart, souls were still escaping back to Azir. Here, Azir can't see him here anymore. So
their bodies slump down in the mud. Grymn can't do anything about it. And so he has to kind of go seek out, he has to leave. He has to continue to find his way out.
He's hoping to draw, he knows if he's on the move, then he'll draw demons away, and he's hoping Talon will stand guard. And he even, says he knows it's kind of a lost cause. Talon can't fight them off forever. But he's just kind of desperate looking for him. And he is in the Garden of Nurgle here. Right now it looks like a swamp with great big sort of barges moving through it.
Yep. And there's armies of demons waiting to go through the gate, through the portal into Garan. So there's this big glut of demons waiting to enter in through the round gate, and they haven't been able to so far. He's plopped in the other way and has found himself in a mess, and has to kind of lead them away. Now, back in Garan, huddled around the gate are Morbus and Gardus, and many of the other Stormcasts that are there, and they have to decide: do they know that the lantern is there? They're kind of like, well, as long as it's lit, that means he's alive, right? It's connected to his soul,
but it's like fading.
It's fading. So they're like, do we destroy this gate? I mean, which is what you should do, right? Destroy the gate so the demons don't come out, or do you take the time to go in after Grymn? What would you do?
And that's one of the interesting things, is that the lantern is actually stopping. It's one of the mechanisms that's stopping the demons from coming in, right? Yeah. So it's interesting MacGuffin.
Catch 22.
Yeah. right? You're going to go in and catch him, but you know that it's going to get weaker as it goes on. So it'll be harder for people to be able to.
So Gardus is in a position that is weird for them, right? Because as a commander, like on today's battlefields, like you got to make some decisions as far as like what's good for an individual versus what's good for the whole. Now, they're not used to necessarily having to make these decisions because they're used to people getting reforged all the time. Like, well, I lose a guy, he's going to get reforged, he'll be back. You know, there may be some cost associated with being reforged, but we'll see that. Well, now he's got this idea of like, all right, are we thinking this as like no man or no Stormcast left behind? You know, what's more damaging to our morale, that we would leave somebody behind down there, or that we would potentially plunge in and lose, you know, 10 times the number that are already lost in a you know, an effort unlikely to be successful, which they're all acknowledging. You know, he's acknowledging it as foolish, even from his advisors. So it's a tough decision. Perhaps the more responsible thing is not what he does. You know,
well, Gardus also has a unique perspective in that he's already been there too. Like nobody else has had to like have that, you know, experience, like the presumably the horror that goes along with it. So like he knows the stakes in a way, but because of that, it probably also informs his decision as to be like, well, I got to get in there. I know how nuts it is. We got to do something for him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got survived by the skin of my teeth, but yeah.
Yeah. So we had the conversation about free will, right? Would Sigmar want, you know, what would Sigmar tell me to do if I were here, but he doesn't know?
Yeah.
And so he has to make a decision or feel like he's in the process of making his own decision. There's the sense of what is enough sacrifice. And had this been, you know, a liberator just down there, but like it's Grymn. So there's some emotional connection to this brother of his. And there certainly is, I mean, one of the things that we have seen this far too, that we didn't mention, is that in the very first opening, there's this experience that he has since his last reforging where his body starts to exude some light, and he's able to concentrate and pull it back in. And when we get to where he comes down and he meets some of the humans, his body glows again, and some of the humans, their ailments wash away. And so there's almost like he's, you know, kind of changed. His, like every Stormcast that's been reforged has had some change. His seems to have added an ability to him. And like we talked about, he's this, you know, he's this greater good kind of character. He's a healer. In his past life, he was a healer. He's a compassionate leader. He's not like Vandus, where he's the most skilled. You know, though he is skilled, he's a patient and enduring kind of character. And so there's all these things wrapped up in that these themes that we've talked about already. They're wrapped up into this decision, and he doesn't. And Morbus asks him, why are you going? Why are we doing this? Why are we going in? And he says, you know, to rescue Grymn. And Morbus says, well, why are we really doing this? And he says, I don't know.
Well,
good.
It's an interesting dichotomy too, because at the beginning of the book, obviously chapter 1, Gardus is asked, you know, should we go in and rescue this person? And he's in his ear, right? And he says, no.
Yep.
In the second one, we're back in the town where he was before he became a Stormcast. And literally nobody has asked him the question. It's him asking himself the question again. Should we rescue this question? And his answer changes to yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Now in the first
Nobody
case,
even asked.
explicitly had a Sigmar has said no already. So he was like, I'm not going to go against Sigmar's word here.
Yeah.
You know, he could make an intelligent guess as to what Sigmar might say, but you know, maybe he's just going to guess the other way.
So there's something besides Grymn that's pushing him to go down. And he asks his host, I will not force anybody to go with me, but voluntarily, if you will, you can come with. And nearly everybody goes or wants to go. Everybody wants to go, including Tornus. And at one point, Caddick turns to him and says, "Why don't you go?" He calls him out and to kind of be like, you know, kind of catch him again in being less than faithful. And Gardus intervenes and tells him that's not cool, Caddick. But Tornus steps up and he says, "I want to be there." This is something I have to do as well. And so Gardus and the gang go down. They end up leaving Karunta, a heralder that's meant to bring the house down in case they start coming out. The demons start coming down.
I've been on the receiving end of that, yeah.
And I think they leave Adius in there, who
no, they
no, he goes with.
They're Vexilor. Vexilor stays because if the trumpet can't bring it down, then he'll bring a meteor strike down. So Angston, Karunta, and Angston stay.
I think you might flip those, but we'll find out.
David's right.
All right. Then so they drop in. They arrive in the garden and they find
they've got one additional person with them that's pretty important to the plot here.
So they also bring Gatrock with them.
Yeah. And
how did they convince him to go?
Well, so they he's bound in chains and they're asking him, Gardus actually shows some modicum of compassion where, take off his helmet. I want to see what it looks like. And again, you get some awesome dialogue from Gatrog here. He's like, but they're talking about, he's saying better death than in bondage, because they're saying we need a guide, and he's saying, well, I'm not going to help you, and he was like, well, we'll strike your head from your shoulders right now. And he said, well, better death than to be in bondage. But basically, they give him the chance to die like he would want. I'll give you a sword, but you have to swear an oath to me. Swear an oath that you'll guide us honorably. And Gardus sees through to this, like, this guy's word is worth something. It's important to him at least. And so he says, on your word, and basically draws an oath from this knight of the Order of the Fly that he will guide them. And so you get to see how much that oath is worth over the course of this. But he follows them in as a guide, basically.
Yep.
Well, and the reason that he can be a guide is because in order to be one of the Order of the Fly, you have to go in and visit Nurgle, right? That's part of the indoctrination, as it were, right?
Right.
So he also has been into the realm of Nurgle and has come back out again. So we have a good character that's been into the Garden of Nurgle and come out, and a bad character that's been into the Garden of Nurgle and come out. Mm-hmm. And then the third character who never went into the Garden of Nurgle, right? Because Torglug never went in.
Yeah.
But he switched from bad to good now. Yeah.
There's and Gardus is able to elicit some of this by having his glow. There's a cool line here where Gardus gets up close to him, puts his glowing hand on him and starts wisping smoke. And Gatrox says, "Get your filthy hands off of me." That's pretty, again, like, just this sort of weird juxtaposition of, you're used to just thinking of these rot bringers as like, oh, super gross dudes, but like, this guy really believes. He when they pull off his helmet, he's like, I am handsome, am I not? Gardus says no. He says, then I am in good company. Like he's willing to jibe back at these guys, and sees himself on the side of right, which makes him much more interesting than it would be if he was.
You seem to be analyzing these characters just a little bit too much. Like, whose side are you on?
I mean, I make no secret.
Well, and that part of that juxtaposition is that, the Stormcast represent hope, and the Order of the Fly and Nurgle see hope as the weed, as the thing that is destructive.
Hope is the weed in grandfather's garden, right?
Yeah. Because everything eventually dies, everything eventually goes away, and so hope is nonsense. Despair, like learning to live with everything is going to die, is the ultimate, kind of faith, and so there's this battle of faiths. So yeah, there's definitely, again, I do think there's a lot of really thoughtful things here, and I think this is there's certainly a lot of battle that we've seen so far. But as you'll see from what we're talking about, like, there's quite a bit of depth to the conversation, I guess I'd say, is to the symbols that were being shown beyond just the fighting. So let's step back to, so they jump in, but let's see what's happened with Grymn. As he's come to and kind of escaped, one of our favorite, another favorite hero of Nurgle has captured him, and kind of locked him up in his ship, and that is Senor Gutrot Spume. I mean, Capitan.
I'd probably call him Capitan.
Capitan. Gutrot Spume.
I know his model doesn't have like a three-cornered hat, but like all through the book, I pictured it.
It's like an admiral hat or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
The tentacles could make it. You could just tell the tentacles to make a hat when he wants it. He doesn't even need one.
But that would be especially gross. Yes, you're correct.
And Spume wants to know Grym's secret. He wants to unlock the secret of the Stormcast. Never, to his knowledge, has Nurgle had a specimen, and so he binds him up and seeks to take him. There's a voice in laughing at Grym that's talked to him a bit since he's gotten here. What was your first impression of who this voice was?
Right when he's arriving, yeah, I'm with Aaron. I was like, oh well, you're entering Nurgle's realm. He's gonna start, trash talking you as soon as you're through. But yeah.
But we find out that it is not Nurgle, somebody much lesser than Nurgle who is in his head.
Yeah, Gutrot Spume terms him a stowaway appropriately. But,
yeah. So he kind of says, "Oh, there's two of you in there."
Yeah.
And it reveals that it's Bubonicus is inside Grym's head.
Dun, dun, dun.
Because
possibly literally, yeah.
Because literally the maggots that he vomited into his mouth before his death are growing and eating away inside of Grym and trying to eventually seek to control him.
You know that kid who would eat worms when you're growing up?
That's him.
Yeah.
I was him.
You still are him. And this is actually it's spelled out in the books at some point that this is a skill he learned from a different Blightmaster is what they're called. Yeah, Blightmaster, another character from one of Reynolds' previous works as well. But if we're not going to spoil it, then I won't spoil who.
Nice, Mr. Reynolds. Your universe, your individual AOS universe that you've created is vast.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Yeah, digging.
And so Spume has him aboard his boat. He summons, so he does some. It's interesting because not only is Spume a pirate, right, and he gets called a reaver often, and he's a sailor. He longs to be out of Nurgle's garden and back into the open seas, and so he's seeking permission to do that. In essence, he's trying to win his way back, because obviously there's not a ton of ways to get from Nurgle's garden. This gate is one of those ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a little ashamed, right? That's why he's here in the first place. Either he was defeated or something to that effect.
Yeah, we saw him in the Realm Gate Wars. He was defeated, I think, by the Hallowed Knights. So
I love his motivation too. It's just that sailing here is too boring, right? Because the waters aren't rough enough.
Yeah.
And so he is then kind of wanting to take him back. So he summons Urslog, a witch, to try and see if she can uncover any of these things for him. And in the meantime, he's let's see here if maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Well, let's stop there. He summons Urslog, a witch, to try and kind of divine things of him and that sort of thing. And so he's got kind of somebody else that he's brought on board, another character to help.
He wants to learn more about who he's got, and they call him Silver Skins or Shiny Skins, a bunch that Stormcast. But it's not uncommon to come across souls in Nurgle's garden here, and there's a whole spectrum of them. Like there's some that appear miserable, but they're actually there willingly, or they've already given in. And some souls are more valuable than others. So these barges are floating around on the top level of Nurgle's garden, trying to collect these, what souls they can. Some are more valuable. Try and find some treasure, some gold and all the chaff here, or wheat and all the chaff. I think gold and the straw, whatever. Anyway,
I loved it.
Trying to find something that they can then curry favor with the lower, more influential levels of the garden. And he thinks he's found something particularly special, but he needs to figure out just exactly what it is. He needs some help for that.
Well, and we do learn about the garden shape, don't we?
Yeah. I can't remember where it's laid out, but we had talked. Yeah, it's an inverted pyramid, right?
Yep.
7 levels appropriately.
And it was interesting because he mentions that Nurgle took a liking to a specific civilization's architecture, and built the garden in that image, and only inverted it. So it's so it's 7 layers bean dip of Nurgle's garden. And yeah, so at the top and where we start in Nurgle's garden is the safest layer, the least noxious, and down at the bottom is where Nurgle is,
his manse, no less.
Yeah, his pillow.
I think it also mentions like that this realm used to be, at some point there was like a giant worm that made this realm its home, and these are some of the castings, like the worm was slain, and then the realm
Let's
was.
talk about that for a minute, because there's other places throughout the next part where they touch on that, and we probably don't need to pause for that at each time it mentions it.
Sure.
But there's a lot of things where it talks about like this used to be something else.
Yeah. Well, we talk about the nature of the realm of chaos. So previously you'd understand it as like formed by the thoughts and emotions and motivations of humans. Like that was kind of maybe how it was defined in the world that was. Here it seems like it was a place that Nurgle came across and said, this place, this is going to be mine. And
called it.
Exactly. So like pulls it in. And they've also in the past bordered with other Chaos Gods realms somehow. That's not, that relationship isn't very clearly laid out here, which is fine. I'm totally cool with some mystery, but I really liked the additional structure, I guess, given to the garden instead of just being completely amorphous or whatever. Like
more structure to Nurgle's realm than any of the other realms.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. But it made it feel. Josh Reynolds did an amazing job of kind of realizing this and making it a place instead of just being like, it's Nurgle's garden, it's super gross and you're probably gonna die.
But I think
good luck.
So there's two things there. One is I think the inverted pyramid could also just be a metaphor. It may not actually be exactly fit into that kind of space, right? Sure. It could be this idea of like what's the pyramid of needs, or the
hierarchy of needs?
Food pyramid, that's all I got.
Yeah, the hierarchy of needs, etc. So it's a perversion of life, right?
Right.
And so maybe it's something like that. I don't know. And I think the absence of explanation. Anyway, so there's that. But it does seem like there's things like there's sometimes where there was this previous civilization, and here's where maybe we were talking about this a little bit before. Like there's a part in one of the Rumgate the campaign books where it talks about where they're going to retrieve Galmaraz at a point where the Tzeentch sorcerer is trying to pull that section of Shaman up into the realm of Tzeentch. And so maybe some of these places were plucked out of one of the mortal realms,
sure,
and pulled in, corrupted, and then pulled in to make it a part of the garden, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Garan, when Nurgle's trying to conquer Garan, maybe eventually wants to pull that up into his realm and make that a part of his garden, etc.
It's a very interesting situation. The way that it's described is that there was a worm god.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And there were other smaller worms that basically like worshipped him, and like this is the cast off of that creation.
Yeah. There was also one city in which Nurgle had built the city and inhabitants, and then rearranged it and changed it, and kind of like this like Minecraft kind of environment. Where he's like, oh, you go over here now, and you go over here now, and you're going to live a new life, or you're going to become a different thing, or whatever. So there's a lot of different perversions in this garden of what collections of life that Nurgle has brought here.
Well, and the really interesting parallel right now is Shadespire, right? Where Nagash pulls Shadespire into a different realm. It's very much the same thing, and Josh Reynolds is seeming to imply that this is going on with the Chaos Gods and with the Death Gods. So it's also kind of an interesting thing with Azir being able to be closed off, and now that is completely Sigmar's realm. So has Sigmar done something of the same nature? You know, it's an interesting question that's being posed.
In Coalescence, the diaphanous fastness was pulled into between realms, and so that it was hidden. I mean, it's canon.
Yeah.
Sure.
TM.
So it was written, so it shall be.
But yeah, so it's a strange collection of conquests and you know, perversions. So so it's good to talk about that as we go through this. There's some, you know, Josh does a nice job of kind of pointing out each of these layers and how it's different from the one before. So let's get back to Gardus. They arrive in the garden. They find the Stormcast bodies in Talon, and Morbus does this another thing that's new for a Relictor, which is really cool. He's able to collect their souls, and he performs another one of his rites as a Lord Relictor, and pulls their souls kind of into himself, and you know, kind of becomes a part of him. And he is increasingly burdened. Mm-hmm. The toll it takes on him. I mean, it's another thing he has to concentrate. It's another thing that, you know, if Gardus, like there's a lot of physical fortitude in the Stormcast, but these Relictors have like this mental fortitude that's ridiculous.
It's worth pointing out he was already tired before they went in, because he was like bringing storms to help take the you know, Sargassum citadels. So yeah, he's already fatigued. Bad news.
Yeah. So they collect all of these. They find a galley. They rid it of all of its, you know, its crew, and then Morbus sets it ablaze with power. So he uses his power, and it kind of just trades the rotten sails for, you know, kind of Azir sails.
Yeah, I'm no sailor, but I'm pretty sure the best thing to do when you get on board a boat is set it on fire. So that's what I'm taking away here.
I mean, that's what the KOs
makes it go faster. It's like when you paint flames on a car.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. And so so they get going on the boat. And then we cut back to Spume, and he gets stopped by I don't know, a Rotbringer or a Rotbringer, a kind of emissary of the Lord of Flies or the whatnot.
Is this the one that lands? He's riding on a fly, or is that
this guy was awesome?
Yeah,
and kind of acts all hoity-toity.
Oh, he's amazing. So he's like in all this like tattered finery, like ruffled collar and all that sort of thing. Like, this made me want to make, you know, so already like with the Order of the Fly, I'm like, oh man, I want to make like a mortal Rotbringer army. These guys show up, and I'm like, now I want to make a Nurgle demon army, like, you know, all gross and tattered, and I don't know. Damn you, Josh Reynolds.
Yeah.
And so he brings a message to tell Spume that he needs to bring Grym down to the Gate of Desolation. And Spume's like, well, I'll do it, but not because you told me to. I'd be doing what I want to be doing. And he gives him too much lip on his own boat, and that's something that Spume can't forgive. And so he cuts him in half or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So he has a destination. Sorry about that. So they fight through.
We have some segments of this book where it kind of switches back and forth. So now basically race is on, right? So the Stormcast have picked up. They could turn around, although I'm not sure if they really know how to get back out, right? But they've picked up 6 of the 7. Like, you could turn around and you're pretty successful, but they're going to keep pushing on. So now it's this chase. It becomes like a chase movie where Spume's trying to stay ahead of them and they're trying to follow. And so you'll go back and forth. Here's what's going on with Spume. Here's what's going on with the Stormcast, and it'll continue to move forward in time. So it's not always happening simultaneously, and you just kind of jump back and forth as the timeline advances.
Yep. Morbus can sense Grym's energy, so they kind of know a direction. We know where Spume is going, and so now we get to the Gate of Despair, or or this is the Gate of Desolation. And
big difference between the
there's three. There's a number of gates here, so we get some confusion. And so what they get through and what they find is this gate is there's a Tzeentch statue and there's a Nurgle statue, and they're kind of caught and battled because of something that they did. They'll never be forgiven, and so they've been punished to sit here as statues.
Yeah, particularly Lord of Change came in and tried to start spreading hope in Nurgle's garden. That was his crime for which he got petrified. So no gardener likes someone bringing a bunch of weeds in. So
and so they fight through this gate. There's hanging corpses, there's statues. They managed to get through this one by setting all the corpses and stuff on fire. Blazes through, and the prosecutors smash some of the statues and kind of catch them off guard. They get through. The statues heal themselves, etc. And so they get through without much difficulty. Then they get through. That was the Gate of Desolation. Then they get to the Gate of Despair. They kind of create these defensive positions. There's scouts ahead. There's some argument, and this is another place where so we get some conversation between Tornis and Gatrog, because Tornis is the one who's seen hope in Gatrog or something in Gatrog, and Gatrog feels pretty insulted by this. And Gatrog starts making Tornis question who he is. That this is not the real him. That Torglug is the real him, and he refers to him as Torglug, and he starts getting under his skin. Yeah. And so there's a lot of this back and forth. Who are you really? And Tornis has been getting this from the Stormcast, and now he's getting it, on the other side from agent of Nurgle. And so Tornis doesn't have a side. Like, he doesn't have a team rooting for him. I will say one thing I forgot to mention is that at that point where I think it was at the point where Caddoc called out Tornis and saying, "Hey, why don't you volunteer or whatever?" Gardus makes a pretty profound statement in calling Tornis brother, and Tornis in his head notes that his Lord-Celestant never did that. So even his Lord-Celestant, who was in command of him, who probably saw him in battle, worked with him, seen him do great things, still never called him brother. And Gardus was able to do that without knowing him well, having fought him and trusting in what Sigmar is doing. And so the only time he's gotten that is from Gardus. And so he's definitely drawn and to a loyalty of Gardus because of that. To add some more weight to his only connection, whether it be Stormcast or Nurgle, is Gardus. We get so there's this argument, and this is throughout the book, is this back and forth between the two, both, and they're not just idiots arguing. Like, there's some good points that are made. There's some very intelligent conversation here. That there's this, he was Torglug with this tiny seed of hope in him. Now he's Tornis, maybe with this tiny seed of Nurgle in him. So is that true, or has he been totally cleansed? Has he not? And so again, it's all eating away at Tornis's faith. Is he to remain faithful? Is he worthy of either Nurgle or Sigmar, the bastard god?
Whoa, strong language.
Well, hope is a lie, so sure. Sigmar is a liar.
Weed in the garden.
Let's see here. So there's a moment where we get back to Grymn. It seems like he's lost some control of his body. He's not able to move his arms, and Bonicus kind of chuckles at him, and it's this show of progress of what Bonicus has been able to do by chewing away at his insides and gaining some bits of control over Grimm's body, and his eventual goal is to take over his mind.
Yeah, and Grymn can literally feel these maggots squirming inside of him, like in his stomach, and they come crawling out of his nose at times, and pretty gnarly, chained up and enduring all this. But yeah, all of a sudden his body's not his own. Occasionally his words are not his own. He'll say something, and his captors will be like, "Who's saying that to me? Is that Bubonicus, or is that you Silver Skin?" That's that. I thought that was a pretty cool dynamic there.
Yeah, and so go ahead.
No, it also creates some interesting promise. So we already have a follower of Nurgle who's become a Stormcast. Now we've got a Stormcast who appears to be becoming a follower of Nurgle, unwillingly. So this is a really cool thread to keep an eye on. Especially, and we mentioned it, but they set this whole book up at talking about the Stormcast that had died the final death. So they created stakes right out of the gate, right? You reminded us of what the stakes could be. And so I feel like there's some promise here that, or at least the threat, like the risk feels real, right?
Yep.
So
I'm going to fast forward a little bit because some of these pieces are in other chapters, but Urslog identifies the witch on the boat, identifies Grym, the two identities and what's happening there, but she has an idea of her own. She scries a symbol onto the side of the boat without Spume knowing it, and calls Gothrax and kind of on a conference call, and then scries another one and gets who's the other?
Queekish is what you have written. The
Rancic, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Who's a vermin lord, we find out is a vermin lord, and so tries to auction off Grym.
Mhm.
Says, "Hey, I know that you've to Gothrax, Gothrax, this one. He had killed your father or whatnot, and then this rat is also interested, so she tries to auction him off, but Spume overhears, cuts her head off."
Dude decapitates like a lot of people in this book.
Yeah. And then kind of turns over her cauldron that she's been cooking things up in and splashes a load of it on top of Grym, which totally stains his armor, but it also ends up weakening the chains. And there's a little conversation between him and Bubonicus, and he's wanting to kind of break the chains and go after Spume. Bubonicus is like, "Don't do it. He's just going to kill us." And we find out that Bubonicus is not interested in Grym's death yet.
Right. And we have a couple, so, we don't need to get super into it, but back on the surface, Angston, the Vexlor, is having some philosophical debates with one of the rescued humans, and Tornus / Torglug is having this debate with Gatrog, and Bubonicus and Grym are having the debate like that. These kind of back and forths are happening in multiple different places, and they're different. They're kind of different parts of the same debate and conversation. Some of these themes that we've talked about, but yeah, like Bubonicus and Grym are having an actual, besides the struggle, the physical maggots and fortitude struggle, they're having an internal mental struggle as well.
So we get back to let's see. There's some back and forth getting back to the gate. Is good to know where we're at with them back home, I guess, in Garan. I probably could have left some of it, like we probably could have gotten back, waited till the very end of the book to, get back there, and I probably would have been all right with it.
The only thing it did, I think, was maybe create a little bit of a timer to let you know that if they don't keep moving, if they were to succeed at their mission, but too late, the gates would get shut down on them, which introduces a whole other element of like, how does time work in the first place?
And they mentioned that time works differently in those places, and so
they did decide that the timer was 7 days, which seems very much.
Nurgle probably grinned.
I know, bad choice. But they're gonna collapse the gate in 7 days.
Yeah.
In the garden, they're attacked. They lose some more souls, so Morvis has to take on some more souls onto him. Spume racing forward, ends up facing off against Guthrax, son of Borithrax. So Borithrax is in the Realm Gate Wars, and he's a great. So Guthrax is a great unclean one. Spoon faces off against him, and kind of takes care of him pretty easily. And then we find these protectors. Let's see. I think I missed the spot where Gatrok. Nope.
Gatrog is owed a favor from this, or I'm not Gatrog. Spume is owed a favor from the Skaven, so he's using this shortcut. But unfortunately for him, his pursuers have Gatrog, who knows about this shortcut and makes a suggestion.
Yep.
So
there's these cool, Gargants that are protecting this entryway that was created by the Skaven, and they are covered. They're very, mutated and stuff, Chaos Gargants, and then they've been covered in these runes that are Skaven runes, and Spume is able to speak Queekish in order to kind of turn off the Gargants. Right, it's the clapper.
Yeah,
they walk away.
Power down.
Yep, and so he's able to go through, but then Gardus and the others, Gatrog had known about this path or had heard about this path. And so says, hey, we could go this way. And when they're kind of going a little more on land or kind of pushing through a marsh.
A little portage action here.
This is a pretty awesome scene.
And then they have to deal with the Gargants, and they do pretty handily as well.
Well, and this is really one of the interesting scenes where they're also dealing with the former inhabitants of the place that they are in. This is where it's specifically mentioned. And like the people of this city were completely destroyed and altered into a different life form, right? So they've literally just been fighting this running battle, and the Gargants are like the last thing that they have to face. And then Morbus is just like, okay, we need to do something about this.
It's also probably. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, then it just creates this like gully, and then the Gargants start falling over, right? So they don't have to fight all of them.
Sure, true. And it's worth noting that at least in this area, or maybe throughout the whole garden, I didn't really catch it, but like nothing can actually die, and so even though they're like tearing these Gargants apart, like they're still alive for the most part. Like even after horrors have been enacted upon them.
Well, and the interesting thing for me is that when Morbus hits the boat, he can make it a Stormcast thing, even though it's in the realm of Nurgle. But when he breaks the ground, he's physically altering the realm of Nurgle itself, right? Which was something I didn't think was necessarily, that was not something that I was like, oh, this would be within his power, is to change the actual physical property inside of a realm of a different god.
Yeah, that happens a few times with Morbus, where he managed to pull off some tricks that you're like, ooh, I did not realize that was a thing that they could do. So,
yeah.
Sometimes it works better than others, I would say.
So we get past the Gargants, and both Gardus and the crew, the Stormcast in their boat, and Spume in his boat with Grym, are going through these rat-created tunnels, and they're fighting against Skaven. Spume here is thinking, he's like, hey, I'm supposed to be able to use this. I've got,
I have safe passage,
Yeah.
But we learn that these are, followers of Ratzik. So they're fighting against him because they want Grym, and the Stormcast are fighting against the Skaven as well. And then aboard Spume's boat comes Ratzik himself.
Yep. Spume's able to be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you want the one guy I have? Like, there's 20 of them back there. Go hook that up, and it works.
And he's like, oh yeah, let's do that. And so so they're trying to get through all these boats and all this kind of stuff. The Stormcast are. They kind of come up with this. Here's what we're talking about. Where, all right, I don't know how to exactly describe how this happens. Gardus. So they're in the space. One of the things that we see is that Gardus is at the prow of the ship, and you can visibly see, or I don't know if he can, or if only he can, or if everyone else can see the spirits that he's collected surrounding him, and so he's kind of guarded by these. But They let's see if I can find this. So everyone's kind of beaten down and all this kind of stuff. They've taken on the waves of rats. And there's something that everybody kind of figures out at this time. So along the way, what is it? Spume realizes that he's part of a plan, that him going down further into the depths isn't just about him going down there and answering to somebody, but that he's the lure, and that it'll cause the other Gardus and the rest to kind of follow him down there. And they start, they're bait. He's bait. And so they start to realize this a little bit too. They think Papa Nurgle has this big plan, and he's been luring them and all this kind of stuff. And so that kind of gives them this sinking feeling. Everyone's kind of beaten down. And so Morbus creates a new trick. He turns his lightning, he kind of holds his hands together and lightning between them, and he pulls it apart, kind of like chains. And he hooks it onto Cadoc's lantern, like into it, right? And it becomes this physical thing. And then Gardus like wraps those around his gauntlets and stands at the prow of the ship, so kind of as an anchor on the ship, so that Cadoc can pull the ship with the chains, and they end up kind of and so he becomes kind of a tugboat for this ship, lifting it off into the air.
Yeah, there's like a blockade of Skaven boats that they would never, they would just eventually bog them down, and instead of doing that, they get to right over the top. It's pretty. You can imagine it's a pretty cinematic scene. Like they're going over and splinter through all the masts, and basically jump the blockade.
Skaven have like a Free Willy moment where they reach up and they touch underneath. And Paul, this is another example of one of your flying ships. There might be, we're going to have some airships.
Yep, totally, for sure.
Stormcast airships. So they've done this, and then for the first time they see Spume's ship in the distance, but it's kind of am I in the right place? Actually, no, let me stop a second. So then on Spume's ship, we also get Grym kind of waking up or remembering something that isn't his own memory.
Oh, right.
So another test of will that Bubonicus has forced Grym to kind of to remember his own memory and that sort of thing. And at this, I guess we forgot this part too, where while Spume and Verminlord are fighting each other, Grym breaks free and tries to go up and fight them, and that's where Spume is able to get the Verminlord to go back towards the other ones, and he's able to knock Grym back out. All right, so they're flying up. They're kind of flying up, and all of a sudden, on top of the chains, these lightning chains, Gardus sees kind of a black spot, and the Verminlord tries to run down the chains to kill him, and I think he just becomes a pincushion for Enyo and Tornus, and just he runs away pretty quick. He's not ready to give whatever he's going to have to give to get any of that.
Well, and it's not even just that he runs away, but like he's given the opportunity to flee, no less.
Yeah. He hits the deck, and Gardus says, "Get out of here."
Yeah. Oh, it's mercy is the sharpest blade, I think.
Yeah. That was a fun one.
They spot Spume's ship, and so they get into this new space, the Hopeless City, and it's this crazy. I mean, I don't think we can do the description justice here. It seems very metropolitan, and at the same time very like mechanical and like crazy.
It's shifting. Like you think of the scenes from Inception where the city is kind of wrapping up on itself, and like all this impossible angles and architecture and all that sort of thing. Like pretty cool. And this is where that big pompous demon came from, I believe, was from somewhere in the city. So they have people in rusted breastplates, and they're kind of done up as foppish nobility for some of these or guards, and it'd been a cool. They really blitzed through this town. It's another cool running battle, rot flies and all that sort of thing, and they stab a bunch of dudes and poke a bunch of guys in the eye, and they're trying to get through. And there's another cinematic moment where there's a big gate closing, and we're not going to make it, and then manage to gum up the works with, I think Enyo maybe fires an arrow and breaks the chain. They manage to just barely squeeze through and get on to descend to the next level of the garden.
So what level are we on now at this point? Have anybody been keeping track?
This was 4th, and I think when they pop out of here, then they get down to the 5th.
Gotcha.
I believe.
So there's a moment here once they get to the 5th tier where Gardus and Morbus have another conversation. They're all hearing voices.
And this is they get right. The boat just kind of plows into the mud. Right, just comes crashing down.
The energy leaves.
Right, they're kind of spent, and now this is a cool tier. Like there's it's like you had swamps and a jungle and a city and all sort of. Now they're just in. I imagine it's like this massive gray mud flat. So we're all before you had all this kind of Nurglish growth. This is like the desolation, despair sort of level, like where, the finality of where everything's, entropying to, I don't know.
I was imagining such an infinite space with such low visibility and breathability that you feel claustrophobic.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no knowing where you're at, but you feel like you're completely trapped.
I'm imagining the never-ending story when he's in the swamp. Right? There's a little bit that's going through my head.
Isn't that one called the Swamp of Despair?
Yep.
All right.
TM.
So Morbus and Gardus are talking again, and Morbus asks him again, why are we doing this? And Gardus says a voice had told him that he must do this. So we kind of go back and, even then when he decided to come to the garden, because they're questioning, their choice. And all along the way, Gardus is like regretting this. We've lost more people. We're getting further in. The further in we go, the more important is that we make something happen, otherwise it's really for nothing. And so they're trying to find, because they have to find this next gate, and Gatrog says we can't do that without surrendering to despair. But nobody's willing to do that. They say they refuse. We will find this gate. And all of a sudden, out of some puddle or out of the darkness, a shadow or something, a hand reaches up to Tornus and grabs him by the neck, and this shape comes up out of the crack or puddle or whatever and lifts Tornus up into the air. It's the woodsman. It's the woodsman, Torglug. His other self in manifest in some real form comes and starts to kick everyone's butt.
Yep.
So there's a battle, and then separately at the same time, Grym and Bubonicus begin to struggle, and Grym goads Spoom on to killing him, and they actually reach a stalemate and agree that fighting to their death would be better. So Grimm's mental fortitude, like Bubonicus, just can't break through it, and Grym catches him. Like, Bubonicus isn't going to tell him that he's unable. He's still trying to scare Grym and goad him, but he catches him in something he says and realizes that Bubo realizes he can't. So my notes call him Bubo. Sorry.
So you on first name basis with
I'm in nicknames. Hey Bubo. So they reach a stalemate and they agree that fighting to the death is better than fighting together to the death is better, in an honorable way is better than Grym just getting them both killed.
Yeah. So Grym manages he's got enough fortitude to say, I'm going to fight this. You can help me or you can't. And you probably better help me because, if I die, then you're dead too. You're in here with me. There's a cool moment where he has, it's coming up in a bit here, but he has Bubonicus, they're talking, now this debate. So like you talk about having an argument with someone, right? Think about having an argument with someone where you can see each other's memories and like see each other, like you're sharing the same body. So there's cool moments in this where he says, well, you know, you followed the false god and you're not a good man like me. And Grym's able to say, well, why don't you take a look? You know, you can look at tell me, what do you think? Was I a good man? You know, was I true to my word? You know, these things that the Order of the Fly still holds in high regard, you know?
So almost like saying, you know, check my resume.
Yeah.
I'm not a nice guy.
Yeah.
Like I don't have the same like things that you are holding yourself up to. Like I'm the Stormcast, yeah, but I play dirtier than you do. So they they kind of reach this moment, and there's so let's continue on that piece a little bit because Grym's brought up to the deck, and Bubonicus has control of his body but not his mind, and he's again impressed by Grym's mental fortitude, and he backs off and lets Grym have control, and the Grym and Spoon get into a fight. Grym is able to grab him by the kraken. Not a euphemism.
Oh, whoa, man!
And
friendly,
and is able to what do you say? Oh, so they're fighting, and he grabs him, but is unable to, you know, kind of best him. Oh man, where did we go? Sorry, I'm getting lost. So he grabs Spume and then dispatches the crew, but then they're surrounded by the Father of Decay, the Great Unclean One, who's also known as the Hand of Nurgle. And here's where I thought that Bubonicus, this story was going to get more interesting, and maybe it will at some point. But the Father of Decay kind of notes that Bubonicus, or Bubo, is inside of Grym, and he decides to burn him away.
Mm-hmm.
Plucks him out, yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I kind of wanted that to keep going, or to see what would. Not that I wanted Grym to die, but to kind of see what would happen. Where was?
I mean, I agree with you, but I wonder if maybe the climax of Bubo's, you know, story, or, you know, the apex, was that not only did he ease off the gas on Grym, but he actually helps him. And Grym says, "Hey man, what are you even doing? Like, why? Like, even though it seemed like they came to an understanding, he's like, well, I didn't expect this." And he's like, well, I'm gonna give it my all too, in the midst of the fight with Spume.
Yep.
I think.
So the father, Spume asks for a reward for bringing in Grym, and the Father of Decay says, "Well, there's a whole bunch of others here. If you kill those, then we can talk." And so
I'm going to give you a reward, you know, greater than what you can imagine. And Spume spits back, I can imagine, quite a bit.
Yeah, I've got quite the imagination. So Spume goes back after Gardus and the rest. So
speaking of whom?
Yeah, speaking of whom, so Torglug appears and is just wailing on Tornus. And
knocks him out.
Yep, knocks him out. And then Kadok tries to get in there.
Gets a big axe through the pauldron. Like,
not
down.
cool.
Yep. Mortally wounded.
One of the last places you want an axe.
Yeah.
So then he gets knocked down, and then Tornus gets back up, tries to intervene, and then Tornus is, and then here comes Gatrog, who's able to grab the Gladius that was down, or a.
Yeah. Well, Gardus is getting beat to hell, and his rune blade has been dropped.
Right.
And
so Gardus has been taken down.
Chapter ends with Gatrog picking up the rune blade. He knows what he needs to do. You know, he's talked several times. Give me a sword. Give me a sword. You know, even when he's surrounded, like, give me a sword and I'll give you an answer. You know, sort of thing. Yep. Well, now he's got a sword, and he ends up fulfilling his oath of continuing to help. Like, he's true to his word to the end. So rather than break his oath, he runs Torglug through. Basically, decides the fight. To his cost.
Torglug takes him out,
Mm-hmm.
slices him through the gullet, and then Tornus is able to get on top of Torglug and finish him off, and just kind of put to bed for Tornus who he is, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now they're faced with low energy, needing to get further on, and so they reach deeper into their well of power.
Yeah. And there's one thing we haven't mentioned yet that I thought this was a cool idea, just was not executed well, was where they talk about the blessings of Sigmar are fading the deeper into the realm that they get. You know, like the arrows are returning to the quiver less frequently, and the hammers are becoming just hammers instead of lightning wreathed hammers. That my only complaint with that is I thought it was a really cool idea. Would have liked to see it explored a little bit more, but it would do something like, Tornus reached back and realized it was his last arrow, and then literally like 3 sentences later, he fired 4 arrows in quick succession and killed 7 guys with those 4 arrows. Like it didn't. It was a cool idea, but it didn't seem to actually impact the story at all. They continued to just kill just as fast as they were continued to be just as effective as they were before, despite the fact that ostensibly they're going against more difficult enemies with fewer resources at their
and I think this next piece kind of shows too, though, it's this sense of they're going further down. They're going further down and further away from Azir. At the same time, they have this a power that's got a governor on it or a inhibitor that they find a way to leech more out of it to kind of bring them back to whole. And so I think what you're feeling is that there's a tension that Josh is trying to create that kind of becomes less tense because they keep finding that the well is deeper. Right. There's more of that piece there. And so maybe it's that there's not enough time, or there's one too many times of digging into that well and finding more. Because what happens next is so Kadak has been slain, or is near death. And he has a lantern, and which has been, a huge power source for them. But now they want to pull it out of the lantern, this source out of the lantern, kind of take the nuclear material, right, out of the container that's holding it, or taking everything off of it, and just this raw power. And Morbus takes and grabs Kadak's soul onto himself, and then harnesses this power, and he brings the ship back to life, but not just the ship itself, but it transforms it into a ship worthy of the skies of Azir, or the water of Azir. And they realize, and this is different too, and maybe this is the part that's hard to be tangible, is that it's not just that this power source in and of itself is doing it, but it's their faith. And whether that's the moment Torglug or Tornus showed that he is no longer Tornus, or that Kadak was not selfish and went to rescue his brother Tornus, or whatever it was, their faith strengthened them too. But that's such an intangible, and it feels like such a not it's outside the mechanics, right? So it is a lot of new, interesting, and weird mechanics that are brought into this of what does a Lord Relictor do? What does a Knight of Zeros's lantern? What is that about?
I seem to remember the second one is that he took the thing that was in the lantern and jammed it down into the deck or something like that, if I remember correctly, which I thought was a really interesting parallel to the very beginning of the story, where they took the spike and drove it into the pillar. And so to me, it was very much a moment of we are giving up on ourselves here, right? We're going to do this thing, but we're just doing this because this is all we have left to do. Right?
Yeah, I think you're right. He does it becomes some sort of spike type thing, and he nails it into the gate or into the boat. All right, so he does this, and it becomes this new thing, which is just crazy. Like, you thought it had the flames on the side before.
Now it's got double flames
and a spoiler. It's got and wings.
and
Anyway.
lightning nas.
So so they blast through. They get to the Desolation Gates, which are bronze from War of Blood taken from Khorne. Pass through the Balefire wards. So the ship is just charged and like kicks off and bounces off all of this stuff. The galley buzzes past palisades, inverted bridges, and towers. There's flyers coming at them, and all this kind of stuff. And Spoom is Gutrock Spoom is waiting ahead.
Yeah, he set up an ambush, right? So
yeah,
fires off these kind of like sky hooks, but
not nearly as cool.
So Aaron, what's cool about these?
Well, they're strapped to the back of, I guess you'd call them Nurgle ogres, which, I mean, that's the only thing ogres were missing, I think, was just a bunch of hooks attached to their back. Now they're unstoppable forces.
Shooting.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think Spoom uses them to launch those hooks at this galley and try and drag them in, trap them or get a hold. He's fishing for Stormcast, and these are his lines.
I definitely imagine him using this against like cloud sharks or some of those like Caradron,
the sky krakens.
Sky krakens, like, throw them up and then reel them back in, that sort of stuff.
And then the way he does it, he just then cuts off their heads like he does everybody else.
Well, so that's kind of a bump in his plan, is that he throws the hook into it, but there's no stopping this thing, and it starts dragging his boat along with him.
He's gonna need a better boat.
Yeah,
he's gonna need a new boat.
So then lightning goes down the chain, and Spoom is hit with lightning. He's shot with some arrows, and he tumbles into the water.
Didn't he hit the wall first? Wasn't it like a?
Yeah, like took a dent out of it or something like that.
Yeah.
Does anybody else feel like that was a little anticlimactic? I mean, he's been a POV like much of this book. I mean, he's got a lot of character. I wanted to see how he ended up. Like, he was given this challenge. I understand, like, he's the villain, so you don't like expect him to succeed per se. But for him to go down like that seemed like kind of a shame.
Yeah.
Well, and it was very climactic the way that he was set up with this huge, like, this new weapon that nobody had ever seen before, and this perfect trap, and everything was set up perfectly. And then it's like lightning. It's just,
I can assume, but I wanted to know like how he felt about this. Like, what was going through his mind as he crashed
besides
against
rock
that
and then water.
Yeah.
Well, but the real question is this his payment for betraying Urslag, right? Because he kicked her off the boat way back when. So would she have been able to help him do this? Because, like, he had done everything wrong in the book to this point, except for to catch her trying to bargain away Grym. Because Urslag had been telling him everything that was going to be going wrong. Oh, you need to do this because of this. Oh, you need to do this because of this. And before he got to this point, he was like, I'm done with you. He just threw her in the water.
Yeah. It was funny. After cutting off her head, he tacked her head up to the mast and then continued to talk to her. She talked back to him, but yeah, chucked her head. Promised to give her body back and chucked them both in the water. But anyway, back here, yeah, he's a little summarily dispensed of, but that goes for an awful lot of the. There's not many denizens of this Garden of Nurgle that are not pretty easily taken care of. Torgo put up a fight, but it felt like they really kind of blitzed their way through just about everything they came up against. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the fight of faith was probably the harder fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
which says something, right? Yeah. Sometimes the internal battles are the harder ones.
So they're pushing through in the boat. Passes through the gate, and they find this massive army waiting in this space. It's kind of like an amphitheater.
Mm-hmm.
and the galley just smashes into the army and sets them all on fire. And with that blaze, the stormcasts that remain are cleansed. Their armor is cleansed. Gardus, his glowing. There's a few times where he's let it kind of just glow, but instead of fighting it, he's letting himself be who he's supposed to
Let
be.
his soul glow.
And I think this is and I mean, this is also an answer to, like, he's in the beginning, he's uneasy with this ability that he has, and he doesn't trust himself. And so this is also him throughout him coming down deeper. He's trusting himself that this is the right path. And Morbus at one point tells him, no, this is the right path. I've figured it out. Be confident. He confides in him that this journey was meant to be. It's not a folly. It's not Gardus just acting on his emotions and being foolish. And so the hand of Nurgle comes forward, the Father Decay. I have a terrible typo in here. And
I saw it.
And he's kind of waxing on. And this is another point where the Stormcasts are kind of dirty. He's waxing on and he's talking and he's like, ha ha ha, and getting cocky. And Tornus shoots him in the eye.
Through his cool little monocle.
And he just starts tipping over. And he's just all like too fat and too unbalanced. And as they're doing this, Gardus sends Enyo to go free Grym. And they do so. And there's a boom from down below. They're kind of in this amphitheater surrounding a cavern that goes down, and Gardus goes over to look down into it. And do you guys remember what he sees?
Yeah, this is you're talking when he looks down in the cistern after they've defeated this. So this for me was about one of the coolest moments in the book. I'll read it off if you cool with that here.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So down below, something began to crawl out of the black heart of that cancerous infinity. It was no shape and all shapes, fat and thin, a plume of smoke, a puddle of oil spreading ever upwards. There were eyes in the smoke as round as cold, dead suns, and teeth that stretched in a grin as wide as the horizon. Fingers like comets clutched at the void as the Lord of all things stirred from his manse and began the long, arduous climb to his garden. Moons crumbled beneath that impossible bulk, and stars were snuffed out. So, there's, I don't know, a lot of times when you think about Nurgle or any of the Chaos Gods, you just think of them as like an even bigger version of their greater demon. But this like really drives home the cosmic horror, like the size of this thing.
So it's going to take like 2 Stormcasts to kill him then? Or?
Well, I love one of the reaction is, so Gardus and Morbus are talking back and forth, and Gardus is saying like, he's coming for me. I escaped once before. I shouldn't have. My fate's written. He's going to get me. And he says, keep them back. Keep them from seeing that if you can. Like, it's so horrible. Like, he doesn't even want the rest of his Stormcast to see, a Chaos God, see Nurgle himself coming up after them. This was like, felt like about to be fulfilled on a bunch of promises of the book. I was really pumped. I thought this was an amazing scene here.
Yeah. So, but instead of Gardus making the jump, Morbus stops him, and he says, "I've got one storm left." And he jumps in.
Yeah.
All of the Stormcast spirits with him, they jump in as Nurgle reaches up to grab him, and they just explode in his hand.
Yeah.
Morbus detonates himself, basically. And a beam of light shoots up from Nurgle's hand, and the Stormcast kind of get carried away into it, and they blast out of the pit.
Yeah, Nurgle screamed. And right before he jumps, he says, "This is why we were here, Gardus. This is the first blow and the last. This is the settling of a question millennia old." The question here, I believe, is like, do you bleed Chaos Gods, right?
Like a certain Xerxes.
Yeah.
Is Sigmar strong enough? Is he equal? Right? Can he hurt them the way that they've hurt him? And so we're back up in Garan. Karunta is almost ready to close the gate. It's been 7 days. The order of flies that have been out in ships have since come back and have been fought off. The free people have been told to leave, and demons are pouring out of the gate. And as they're kind of like losing their own hope, white light bursts out of the gate, and out come Gardus and Tornus and a number of other of the living Stormcast that survived. And then following them they can see each of the spirits coming out of the gate and blasting up to Azir, and one of them being Morbus's soul. And why are they surprised?
Well, Morbus should have been like he was landed literally in the hand of a chaos god, and
yeah. So not only should he be just dead because Nurgle had him in his hands, but there's something about his soul coming up that everyone realizes that a Relictor's power is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like the physicality or something about seeing the soul. It says Morbus's soul was more powerful than they had imagined. And so another kind of key to the Relictors and that sort of thing. I don't know that when Gardus died, there was any sort of like mention of that, right?
I don't think so, no.
When any of the Lord-Celestants have died, it's sure they might have, be amped up a little bit, but I don't think they compare to the Relictors. Which is also too, I mean, I'm thinking about like, in the latest Stormcast book, the Relictors got a bunch of new prayers and that sort of thing that made them more powerful, whereas before maybe felt like they weren't as powerful. So, I mean, it's kind of this revealing of how awesome they are. And Zephocles and the Astral Templars arrive just as everything's done. It's saying, hey, we heard what happened, and Gardus is like, how? And he turns to like the guys who stayed back. Hey, did you tell anybody? And they're like, no,
not us. Yeah.
No. And it says, what's her name? Cassadora is there, and she says the sky hosts have claimed to have heard the screams of a wounded god, and so not only did they tell Nurgle, hey, we wounded you, but
everybody knows.
Everybody knows.
Damn. And that is basically where our book ends. So we've gone through this arc. Obviously, Gardus has decided to go. We find out that Sigmar knew this was going to happen. He sent them there. Like Gardus is reforged with this power. He sent them to this place, knowing that this realm gate was here, probably, knowing that Grymn was going to get caught in it. That Gardus was going to make the choice to return down there, make his own choice. This is our question of free will, right? Did he choose to go down here, or is he just working with, who he is, right? That sort of stuff.
A little bit of both, right? Like in a way that, like, is it really free will if somebody knows what you're going to do? Like,
right. And they're surprised to see Tornus come out and return, but I don't think anyone's going to question who he is.
His allegiances anymore.
And I mean, so, and Sigmar literally has struck a blow to Nurgle, not figuratively, not metaphorically, not
very literal, physical sense,
not incidentally, but like punched him in the hand.
Did you just punch me in the hand?
Well, here's the question I have, right? So, like, when Morbus's soul goes up, it's so huge and so powerful, nobody had any idea, right?
Yeah.
But he was in Nurgle's hand.
Mm-hmm.
Did part of Nurgle go up with Morbus, right? Does he now, like, was that all Morbus's soul originally, or is there now something more there?
I don't think there was a hint one way or the other necessarily.
No.
I mean, the way I read it was that it was all celestial energy.
Yeah, it revealed,
impressed by the power he, like, nobody's seen a Relictors under their skirt kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in the
you want to?
I mean, you've seen the size of the power.
Directly proportional.
But when Vandus was fighting Archaon, and Archaon killed him, and the light was going up, and he kind of tickled his fingers through there. I mean, we asked that same question, like, is he tainting that in any way? You know, I don't know.
Yeah. Should we go around the horn here? Final thoughts.
Sure, let's do that.
All right, Aaron, you got any final wrap up thoughts on this?
You're looking at him. No, you know, I really loved it. It started off real strong. I think we maybe alluded to it at some point, but I guess maybe I think we've talked before about maybe the stakes ended up not being as stakey as I would have thought they would have been, especially knowing going into it how Stormcast can be lost. But I guess I don't hold it against the book, knowing that everybody survived. Like sometimes the good guys just win. So that was cool. I really liked how the way Reynolds set this in sort of a greater story arc, how he referenced a lot of old characters, how it's sort of a sequel of the Realm Gate Wars. What that did is really cement this story in a place and in a setting and in a time, and it made it feel more concrete, I guess, with its context. And you know, all in all, I just straight up liked it. I love the characters. The characters are great. I like how it really fleshed out the individuals in the Steel Soul, so much so that I want one of my next armies to actually be a Steel Soul host, because of all the different characters having so much, you know, personality. So yeah, no, all in all, I give it a 2 thumbs up. I guess I do kind of want to know. I guess I don't know what you'd call it, but the sequel, what happens next, especially for a lot of these characters, and including Ramesses too, even though he's not necessarily a Steel Soul, but it's left a lot of good threads that can be picked up in the future. And
he's a bullheart,
basically, and you know it. So I can't wait to see where I assume Reynolds runs with some of this stuff.
Yeah. How about you, Paul?
I really enjoyed it as well. I had to go with 2 thumbs up as well. It was really interesting to have that much differentiation between the different forces of Nurgle, right? Like the only ones that were, quote, uninteresting were the ones that were like the idiot. They were supposed to be uninteresting, right? Like the first level, they're like, oh yeah, these guys are just a bunch of idiots. And like even Spiam was talking about how, oh yeah, plague bearers are just a bunch of idiots. They can make me do stuff for some stuff, but you really need people to do this, or, you know, etc. But also had the really nice AOS touches of like when they introduced Enyo, they had this really cool moment where she was talking about when before she was turned into a Stormcast Eternal, she had memories of flying because her town or village or whatever was a clockwork village. So she had her own prosecutor wings before she was taken up into Azir. And I thought that was just an incredible moment, and like a couple other moments of just small things that added a lot to the story itself. And then obviously I really enjoyed the moment where Morbus, the rite failed and the ship crashed, and the Gardus is talking to him and he's like, well, I guess there's a weakness in that rite. And then, you know, they talk about how there's the starlight coming out of his soul, just the idea of you have these human faces in these like superhuman powers basically, but the idea that the entire person could be suffused with this, you know, Azir power, as if instead of being people who are a part of it, as if they were filled by Azir itself. And so it was more of a part of Azir going down into the realm of Nurgle than necessarily an army of people from Azir, if that makes more sense. Right? It was a really interesting way of portraying that.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, the things I really liked, I loved the diversity, the gender diversity that Reynolds was able to just make seamless through here. Like it didn't feel forced. It was really cool. I really liked learning more about Relictors and these rites and the mysteriousness. Like ever since, you know, Ionis, you know, in like the book after Gates of Azir, where we start learning more about him and him being able to take out like a castle and all that kind of stuff. Like,
and you're like, wait a sec, the rules don't let him do that.
We got to write some rules for unlocking those powers, those rights.
Sure.
But you know, they just seeing that, exploring what that means and how that works, etc., is really cool. The 4 rights that just help them ignore Nagash. Like, how annoying is that? Saying Nagash, he's like, "Ah, I'm talking to you."
Yeah. If it was just 3 rights, it wouldn't be a big deal. But that 4th one really sticks it.
You know what the 4th one is?
What's that?
Hold music.
Let me get you my superior.
And then yeah, I mean, I too. I mean, like, I'm really excited for the characters. I'm really excited. I was so excited to hear that we're going to get to read more about Gardus. I think I glazed over him in the Green Torque, like it was a small bit.
Gardus.
And so yeah. So I mean, I think all that's really good. I do think that there's a few spots like the slaves had at one point said, "Hey, we decided we're going to stay and fight." And like Karunta's like, okay, but then at the last part, they'd been sent away. So there's some continuity things in some of those characters, but at the same time, I thought he did a great job, like nailing and differentiating a whole bunch of different character types. There's a ton. There's like the cast is huge in this.
Yeah.
And so he did a really good job with that. I think a couple of these characters probably could have dropped. And there's just maybe a couple too many, but I really enjoyed the book. I really enjoyed reading it. I was I read it just over this past week and kept wanting to find ways to read more of it. So it was great. How about you, Davey? Last thoughts?
Yeah, if you had told me before I read this that 30 to 40 Stormcast were going to enter the Garden of Nurgle, get all the way through, hurt him, and all get back out safely, I would have told you that sounds dumb and I'm not interested. But this was definitely my favorite Age of Sigmar book so far. So it's a credit to Josh Reynolds that he was able to take something that on face value I'd be like, I don't like the sound of that, and turn it into such a good story. I think his strengths are making Nurgle interesting. Before I read prior to this, I think I said before my favorite character was Lord Grelch, who lasts for all of 1 chapter in one of them. But it was because he took Followers of Chaos, and I was like, okay, I get it. Like, now I understand, especially on a weird one like Nurgle, where you're like, why would you want to be all gross and diseased? And I don't see the allure. Well, he found a way to do that. He made the Garden of Nurgle like a believable place, really fantastical. It made me think of some of the more like adventures of Baron Munchausen or Time Bandits, like going to these really kind of fantastical places. You could really picture them. I thought that was amazing. And I've already kind of mentioned or alluded to this, but I was a little I guess I thought the final thing I thought was a really cool idea, like to hurt a chaos god. That was cool. And I think it could have been a more impactful moment. It could have been more, setting aside any believability things, because I think he explained it and justified it well. And I think you've helped me, in the discussion of this, understand they're really digging into the power of like the relictors. But I think the moment would have been greater if there'd been some kind of sacrifice, some kind of notable sacrifice. I think it would have held more weight at the end, and I think it would have paid off some of the early promise where you were like, wow, the stakes are really high. And like Aaron was saying, like they didn't pay a price, I guess. And I think I just think it could have been a more powerful ending if they had, like, you're willing to sacrifice some Stormcast souls to show that you can hurt a chaos god rather than everybody get off scot-free. But that is a relatively minor quibble in what I think was the best Age of Sigmar book so far. Hats off to Josh Reynolds. He did a great job.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for these continued fantastic books. And I do think, I mean, we talked about this a little bit. There's a little bit of age to the realms, and the authors have gotten more under their belt, and these characters have had some experiences, which I think is all culminated in just better storytelling, better characters development, and reaching some cool places. Anything else, gents?
Nope. You got it.
It's time for our reforging. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Comment below. Leave a review for us on iTunes. Why don't you guys give me each of your Twitter handles? Davey?
At @red_Zeke.
Paul?
PJ Shard.
Aaron?
Yeah, it's A Bowler, ABOHLER. Yeah.
Awesome. And myself, Eric, at Stone Monk Gamer. A like, a subscribe, and a review on iTunes would help others find our show and dive into the Age of Sigmar stories. We've reviewed a ton of them. And lastly, if you want to support the show, we have Mortal Realms status tokens available as a free do-it-yourself printable download, or for $15 US plus shipping, you can have 60 full-color, high-quality laser cut tokens. Jerk. To help you keep track of your synergies on the battlefield. Find the link in the show notes and comments below. Don't read this at all. Don't. Wait a minute. All right. Thanks, and we'll catch you next time in the Mortal Realms.